Hi, Peachy. Hi, Mint. Hi, Ash. Hi, Mikarin. How are you guys on this wonderful Wednesday? Wonderful Wednesday. I think I'm a little bit too tall right now. Am I? There, that's better. That's better. I was too tall. I was sitting on my knees. Gonna work anyway. Have fun, Silver. Bye. Better? Good. Bit tall. Too tall. Happy lurking too, Mint. Hope you guys enjoy listening to some reading today. I'm very, very happy today. Knees illegal. Man, you know what, Peachy? I got like a cramp in my calf like 4 days ago. And it's actually better now. But holy moly, it was hurting me for like 3 days. It was like sensitive, and like if I touched it, like the muscle was all like messed up and tight. It was painful. Hi, Don! I made it very clear that yeah! Actual agony. It was actual agony. Why do cramps exist? And all what you can do is like lay there in pain. Apparently, Dunn told me that you're supposed to like lift it closer to your body instead of stretching it out. I don't know. Actually, I'll comment my legs hurt. No! That's terrible, Silver. Because of cramps or because you've been working out? Or walking? Or running? Or did you drop something on them? These are all reasons why your legs could hurt. I have some water, but I drank most of it before I started. Or like Mio infused water. So it's not like plain water. My muscles just decay because I'm not using them. That's what used to happen to me. Like I would get like muscle pains, but it was like specifically because I wasn't using them. It sucked. Hi, Pappy! Pappy, 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 Pappy. I see you've changed your little badge. So now it's a ticket. May the odds be ever in your favor. You didn't change anything? It did it itself. It wanted to show off your pretty little tickets. Dun 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 dun. Okay, guys. Anyways, today I'm really happy because like 2 years ago, September 2021, I like got an appointment for getting diagnosed with ADHD, and I mean, like at this point I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have it, but I really wanted the actual diagnosis, and today the appointment finally came. It's been 2 years, and my appointment finally came, and I've been diagnosed with it officially. Yee-haw! Told me it would be useless. For what? Currently doesn't exactly, but now I get meds. Woohoo! Stimulants! And after my friend about it, and she was like, "You're too depressed. Let's fix that first." Oh no! Couldn't it be like a mixture of both of them? Yeah, I was waiting 2 years for this appointment. That's how much the backlog is. Say welcome to the club, but I'm not diagnosed. I'm gonna believe that most of us are. But one day maybe you'll get like diagnosed. No, feed me. What do you want to eat? Since the label could cause problems instead. Oh, congrats, Don, for winning. For me, the label is very reassuring. Very reassuring, and also I get Without the diagnosis, I wasn't allowed to get medicines for it. Like, they don't just... You have to get diagnosed before. So now I can get medicines for it. Yeah, autism is the one that usually gets pooped on, which is extra poopy. Yeah, you need to have ADHD. How else are you supposed to focus on 5 things at once? How else are you supposed to talk to chat and game at the same time? And maybe do something else? Who even knows? Did you guys see that one Pomo stream where she was doing like 3... No, she was doing 5 things at once, I think. She was in VR chat. She was doing karaoke. She was playing Apex. She was playing Minecraft. And maybe something else? I'm not sure, but she was doing that all at once. That was a wild stream. I'll never forget it. Talking with someone before that was diagnosed with autism and said yes to basically every question. Yeah. A lot of the time, we're just like misinformed about what these diagnoses are, you know? Misinformed, and then media puts like the most awful like expectations for it, and it's like, it's not a bad thing. If everyone has it, yeah, because it's not how the brain is supposed to work. It's not how the brain's supposed to work. My mom horrible multitasking, can very well gaming, eating, talking, and cleaning the same thing. Brain machine broke. It's not doing the chemicals correctly. When I was in the meeting, he showed me 2 brain pictures, and he was like, this is a normal brain, and this is your brain. And I was like, wow. And he was like, yeah, it doesn't have as much lights on. And I was like, yeah. To test online, yeah. But they need to, I think it's because usually like it's a mix with like the medicine, right? Because people like abuse the medicine for it. So you can't like cheat on a test that's online so that you could get diagnosed, so that you can get the medicine and then sell it on the black market. Hi, Madeline! I'm doing good! I'm very happy today. I mean, species is running on evolution and maladaptation. Anyways, that's why I'm really happy. I'm also happy because I got a picture of something, but I can't show you guys it because it's a secret. We do live in a society. I mean, I'm doing fine without, so I'm satisfied just knowing. It really depends on your current like lifestyle and stuff. Like, if you're unable to do things, then that's like bad. Like me. But if you can do things, then it's nice to just like know that it's probably a reason you think certain ways, you know? Thank you! I'm glad you could as well, Don! Only social aspects is annoying. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. All right, guys, today we're continuing some Warrior Cat reading. I'm gonna try and read more today because last time we didn't read as much. I think I only read 2 hours and a half or something last time, which wasn't too much. I'm only on chapter 9 of this book, so it's pretty behind our usual momentums. I think it's also because we have to like learn everything again. Like the first book of the first series, kind of like slow, but we'll pick it up soon. Someone talk to me with my music on. Yeah, I get it. So far we have only 1 person dead on our death toll, which is pretty good, actually. Warrior Dodge. They do actually, I think Aaron Hunter has written a Warrior Dog series. I'll be lurking a bit since I gotta do some drawing still. Yeah, no problem. Usually my Warrior Cat streams are just like lurking streams. People hang out, listen, maybe react if something dramatic happens. How many books? I don't know. Well, there's at least 4 more series. So 6 in each. maybe like 24-ish. I don't know if they're still writing some more. Probably. I really, really, really want to get to the 3rd series, guys. And then I want to get to... Actually, I want to get... Once we get to the 4th series, I feel like the One Piece of books. Once we get to the 4th series, I'm really excited because that's the series I haven't read. But I know bits and pieces about it based on, like Warrior Cat videos I've seen on the internet. And I'm, like, curious to know what happens. I also know, like, certain, like, characters that die. And I'm like, no. So, that's exciting and sad. But that's what I'm looking forward to. Series 3 is my favorite series. Series 4 I haven't read yet, so it'll be like live, real reactions as I'm reading. And I'm excited for that. I mean, I guess these are still live, real reactions because I don't really remember much in the 2nd series. I was talking to a friend, and we had completely forgot that Tawny Pelt was even part of this book. Like, we had erased her from my mind. Sorry, 1 minute, Nono, you look like Neapolitan ice cream. I am Neapolitan ice cream! How'd you know? If I was a flavor, I would be Neapolitan flavored. It's delicious. You just noticed that? Mint! You silly goose. So what happened last time? If I remember correctly... oh yes, so... After... No. Okay, we stopped before they had the meeting. You've not researched Nono lore yet? One day I'll have my own wiki, guys. One day. So... Brambleclaw had his dream, right? He had his dream and he went to the 4 trees on the new moon and he met up with Tawny Pelt, and then we found out who the other few... The other 2 cats are Crowpaw from Wind Clan, who Brambleclaw had run into earlier, and he's very, what's a good word to describe Crowpaw? Crowpaw is like Squirrelpaw, except times 10, I feel. I feel if Squirrelpaw and Crowpaw talked, it would be like the craziest, like they would just fight all the time. And then we have Feathertail, who's from River Clan, and who also happens to be Gray Stripe's kin, his daughter. And Stormfur also came because they're like really closely bonded. Crowpaw's a jerk, to be honest. Crowpaw was like my favorite in this series until later on, and then he stopped being my favorite. They like forgot he was so cool. But he's a jerk right now. Maybe that's why I liked him. I don't know. He was like a little sassy. We'll see though. So we met all the cats. Squirrelpaw followed Brambleclaw, and it was like... And she wants in on all the secrets now. They decided to wait before they did anything because they weren't sure what they were supposed to do exactly yet. They decided they would wait on more dreams or wait until the gathering to see what might happen. What ended up happening is Brambleclaw had another dream, and it was about this... He was drowning in like salty water, and then when he looked up, the sun was like disappearing into the water, and there was this big cave, and it was like... He was like really like shook by it because he kept on tasting the salt afterwards. And he ran into Ravenpaw, who is a loner. He does not belong to the clans, but he was dropping by to say hello to Firestar because there had been like big monsters, like cars, around the forest area, and they were kind of like Ravenpaw was saying it was really freaky, and he just wanted to warn Firestar because he's his friend. And when he was leaving, Brambleclaw decided to spill his guts about his dreams and stuff to Ravenpaw, and then Ravenpaw was like, hey, wait a second, I know a place like that. That's a real place. That's not a dream place. That's a real place. You should maybe go there. I don't know, maybe. And then Brambleclaw was like, yo, that's cool. And so he, without telling Squirrelpaw, he snuck out and went to go visit Feathertail and Stonefur in RiverClan and was like, hey, I had another dream. I think we should go to this place. And then they're like, okay. And then they were like, okay, we have to go tell the other cats, though. So they went together to go find Crowpaw when they were drinking. Like, because they still drink out of, like, there's a drought happening, and they're drinking out of, like, a river that belongs to RiverClan. So they meet up with Crowpaw, and they're like, hey, Brambleclaw had a dream about this place. It's called the Sundrown Place, because it looks like the sun's drowning. There's a cave. We're gonna go try and find it. And Crowpaw's like, fine, whatever, bruh. And then they part ways, and then Brambleclaw meets up with Tawny Pelt and tells Tawny Pelt, and Tawny Pelt's like, yeah, sure, let's go. What do you thought I was gonna say no? And then Brambleclaw was like, no. And so everybody's on board. Meanwhile, Leafpaw and Cinderpelt were perusing about looking for some herbs, and then Cinderpelt suddenly got a vision about fire and a tiger. And she went to go consult Firestar, and they were talking about it, and Cinderpelt's like, hey, so I think this might be about your daughters, or your daughter Squirrelpaw, and also tigers, so Brambleclaw. And then Firestar's like, no, they're not, like, no, that's fine. And then Cinderpelt's like, no, I think we should be concerned about this, maybe. Like, at least, like, keep an eye on it. And then Firestar's like, all right, we'll just make sure they don't, like, talk or something. We'll keep them away from each other. And then Leafpaw was listening in this whole time, and she was kind of like, oh. So that's what was happening. And yeah, I believe that's where we're at now. Hi, Nyarlan! Thank you for the hand pats! Yeah, so the last bit of the last chapter was when Cinderpelt left and Leafpaw followed after her. And I don't think I read this chapter. It doesn't look... Yeah, okay. So I haven't read this chapter. So we're on chapter 9 now. I'm gonna begin. Get yourselves comfy. Start drawing. Hanging out. All these good things. Chapter 9. Brambleclaw chose a plump starling from the fresh kill pile, carrying it a few paces away before he began to gulp it down. Sunhigh was just past, and the clearing was full of cats enjoying the warmth. Brambleclaw caught a glimpse of Leafpaw padding over to the elder's den, a wad of herbs in her jaws. He was surprised to see how unhappy she looked. Perhaps she was in trouble with her mentor, though he found it hard to imagine that Cinderpelt would drive any cat to look so worried. Closer to the nettle patch, Firestar was eating with Greystripe and Sandstorm. As Brambleclaw bit into his prey, he saw his leader raise his head and give him a hard stare, as if he might be in trouble. Brambleclaw couldn't remember anything he had done wrong that his leader knew about, but his fur pricked uneasily. Surely Firestar hadn't found out about the dreams. He braced himself for his leader to call him over and tell him what was on his mind, but when he heard a cat speak his name, it was Squirrelpaw. She snatched a mouse from the heap of fresh kill and bounced over to sit by his side. Phew! She exclaimed, dropping the mouse. I thought I'd never finish feeding the elders. Longtail has the appetite of a starving fox. She took a bite from her piece of prey and gulped it down. So what's happening? She asked. Have you had any more messages from StarClan? Brambleclaw swallowed his mouthful of starling. Shh! Not so loud, he hissed. It was the day after his encounter with Crowpaw and his visit to ShadowClan territory, and he had still not decided how much to tell Squirrelpaw about his second dream. If he vanished on the day before the half moon without confiding in her, he would have broken his part of their bargain, but he did not know what he would say if she demanded to come with them. "Well, have you?" Squirrelpaw persisted, lowering her voice. Brambleclaw chewed slowly, playing for time. He had just decided that he would have to tell the noisy she-cat something, if only to stop all her questions. When he realized that Firestar had padded over from the nettle patch and was standing over them, he stiffened, instinctively unsheathing his claws so that they sank into the breast of the starling. "Squirrelpaw, I want you to go with Thornclaw," Firestar ordered. "He's going to show Shrewpaw the best hunting places near Four Trees." Squirrelpaw took another gulp of mouse and swiped her tongue over her whiskers. "Do I have to? I've been up there with Dustpelt loads of times." The tip of Firestar's tail twitched back and forth. "Yes, you do. When your leader gives you an order, you obey." Squirrelpaw rolled her eyes at Brambleclaw before picking up the last of the mouse and swallowing it. "Now, Squirrelpaw." Firestar's tail twitched again. "Thornclaw's waiting." He nodded towards the tabby warrior, who was padding across the clearing with Shrewpaw. "You could at least let me finish my mouse in peace," Squirrelpaw argued. "I've been on my paws all morning chasing after the elders." "And you should be." Firestar's voice was sharp. "That's what being an apprentice is all about. I don't want to hear you complaining." "I'm not complaining." Squirrelpaw leaped to her paws, her fur bristling. "I only said I wanted a bit of peace and quiet to eat. Why are you always nagging at me? You're not my mentor, so stop acting like you are. Or are you just afraid I'll let you down and not live up to our great leader's shining example?" Without waiting for a response, she spun around and flounced off to meet Thornclaw and Shrewpaw near the entrance of the camp. Brambleclaw noticed that the tabby warrior looked surprised when Squirrelpaw spoke to him, though he was too far off to hear what she said, and it crossed his mind that Thornclaw hadn't been expecting her to join the patrol at all. Then the warrior nodded, and all three cats vanished into the gorse tunnel. Firestar watched Squirrelpaw go with a grim look. He didn't say a word to Brambleclaw, but turned and padded back to Sandstorm and Greystripe. Brambleclaw heard Sandstorm growl. "You know that's the wrong way to handle her. If you order her about, she'll just get more stubborn." Firestar replied in a low voice that Brambleclaw couldn't catch. Then the cats got up and headed towards Firestar's den. "Hi, Saki Shine!" Nom, nom, nom. I do remember you! You showed up once the first time on a Warrior Cat reading stream. I remember! Or either it was a Warrior Cat reading stream or it was the end of a stream. I can't remember that part, but I do remember you. What was all that about? Brambleclaw wondered. Firestar was annoyed with Squirrelpaw, so he made up an excuse to get her out of the camp. His blood ran chill. To get her away from me, maybe? If he was right, there could only be one reason. Squirrelpaw must have told her father about the first dream and the meeting with the other cats at Four Trees. She might have done it deliberately, or she might have let something slip because she wasn't thinking. Whatever had happened, Brambleclaw knew there would be more trouble to come, but at least it meant he didn't have to tell her about the second dream. She had obviously broken the agreement they had made at Four Trees. Trying to put his fears about what Firestar might do next out of his mind, he went back to the fresh kill pile. If he was going to set off on a long journey in a few days' time, it would be a good idea to eat more and build up his strength. He would also ask Cinderpuff about traveling herbs that cats ate to give them strength for the journey to High Stones, as long as he could think of a way to do it without arousing the medicine cat's suspicion. He was just reaching down to pick up a juicy-looking vole when he heard a voice behind him. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" It was Mousefur. Brambleclaw looked around to see a brown she-cat glaring at him from a few fox lengths away. "I've been watching you," she went on. "You've already eaten. You haven't hunted enough today to take any more prey." Embarrassment flooded over Brambleclaw. "Sorry," he mumbled. "So I should think," Mousefur snapped. Cloudtail, who was standing beside her, let out an amused purr. "He's trying to compete with Greystripe," he teased. "Looks like one big eater isn't enough for ThunderClan. Never mind Brambleclaw. Do you want to hunt with me and Brightheart? We'll catch as many voles as you can. And double the fresh kill pile. Thanks, Brambleclaw stammered. Hang on, I'll just fetch Brightheart. Cloudtail raced over to the warrior's den, and Mousefur, with the last glare at Brambleclaw, followed him. While Brambleclaw waited for his friends to reappear, he decided to suggest going up to 4 trees, where they might come across Thornclaw's patrol. He needed to get a hold of Squirrelpaw to find out exactly what she had told her father. If Firestar knew that StarClan had chosen 4 cats, each from a different clan, would he try to warn the other leaders and put a stop to their journey before it even started? But Brambleclaw's patrol saw nothing of Squirrelpaw and the others while they were out, and by the time they returned to camp with Cloudtail and Brightheart, with plenty of prey to add to the pile, night was falling. Most of the cats were already headed for their dens. Brambleclaw kept watch until the evening patrol had left and the moon had appeared above the trees, but he still did not see Squirrelpaw. He slept badly that night, worried about the prophecy and Squirrelpaw's unwanted involvement. The next morning, he pushed his way out of the warrior's den as soon as he woke, determined to find the ginger apprentice and get some answers to his questions. But it seemed as if StarClan itself were against him, making him hiss out with frustration. No sooner that he set paw in the clearing than Graystripe called him to join the Dawn Patrol with Sorreltail and Rainwhisker. By the time they returned, after a circuit of the whole territory, it was almost sun-high. When Brambleclaw checked the apprentice den, it was empty. And as he could not see Dustpelt in the camp either, he assumed that Squirrelpaw had gone out training with her mentor. He took a nap in the heat of the day, his worries soothed for a short while by the quiet murmur of bees and the sigh of wind in the branches, and woke to catch sight of Squirrelpaw disappearing into the gorse tunnel. A wad of old bedding clumped in her jaws. Springing to his paws, he was about to follow her when a cat called his name. Brakenfur was padding towards him with his apprentice, Whitepaw. For some reason, the golden-browed Tom looked uneasy. Hi, Brambleclaw! I thought you might like to come and watch our training session, he meowed. Brambleclaw stared at him in surprise. Warriors hardly ever watched the apprentices training, unless they were mentors themselves. With a swift glance at the tunnel, where Squirrelpaw was now out of sight, he replied, Thanks, Brakenfur, but some other time, okay? He headed quickly towards the camp entrance, but realized after a couple of heartbeats that Brakenfur was keeping pace with him. It's just that Firestar thought it might be good practice for you, the older warrior explained, for when you have an apprentice of your own. Brambleclaw halted. Let me get this straight, he meowed. Firestar asked you to tell me to watch you and Whitepaw training. Brakenfur's gaze slid past him and he looked acutely embarrassed. That's right. Bracken. Be-racken. Rack? Bracken? 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 Bracken. But we never do that, Brambleclaw protested. Anyways, it'll be moons before Ferncloud's kits are ready for mentors. Brackenfur shrugged. An order's an order, Brambleclaw. Brambleclaw blinked. It's an order? He shook his head crossly. Did I say it wrong? Again? Brackenfur? Brackenfur? He shook his head crossly. It wasn't StarClan that was against him. It was his own leader. And it was hardly surprising if Squirrelpaw had told Firestar that one of his warriors had been having prophetic dreams without telling the rest of the clan. Fuming, he followed Brackenfur and his apprentice out of the camp and along the ravine to the sandy hollow where the training sessions took place. He sat on the edge, watching Brackenfur put Whitepaw through her fighting moves. A little later, Mousefur arrived with Spiderpaw, and the 2 apprentices started a mock battle. Brambleclaw watched as Whitepaw darted in to give Spiderpaw a quick nip at the neck. Spiderpaw spun around at once, his long black limbs whirling as he leaped on her and pinned her to the ground. They were both making good progress, Brambleclaw noticed idly, yawning with boredom. Spider-Man. I could be doing something useful, he thought miserably. There were only 2 days to go before he was due to meet the other cats at 4 trees and set out on their journey. He needed to talk to Squirrelpaw soon. When Mousefur called a halt and the 2 apprentices climbed out of the hollow, shaking sand from their fur, Brambleclaw returned to camp even more determined to find Squirrelpaw and get some answers. To his relief, when he emerged from the gorse tunnel, he spotted her with Shrewpaw beside the apprentice den. Racing across the clearing, he halted in front of her and demanded, I want to talk to you. He knew that issuing orders was not the way to handle Squirrelpaw. Ready for her to snarl and spit, he was surprised when she mewed and hurried, low voice, with an uneasy glance at Shrupa. Okay, but not here. Meet me behind the nursery. Brambleclaw nodded and padded away to greet Sitfur and Ashfur, who were returning with fresh kill. He paused at the entrance of the nursery where Ferncloud was watching her kids play, forcing himself to sound normal as he commented on how strong and healthy they were growing. Finally, he made his way behind the nursery, a sandy area bounded by nettles where the cats were meant to make dirt. Squirrelpaw was already waiting for him, her dark ginger fur almost hidden in the shadows. Brambleclaw, You've told your father something, haven't you? Brambleclaw interrupted. After you promised to keep your... Are we back? Oh no! Weird. Oh my god, I didn't close my door. Hold on. That was, oh my gosh. My cat just jumped down and then left. And I went to, I turned around to try and see, oh, I'll let you out, kitty. And she was just gone. Discord scared me. Oh, we're starting again. That's weird. Dang it. I hate it when that happens. Now I'm gonna have to edit this. Because it's two different streams? Ugh. Evil. You should have some. Me, Peachy. Okay. Let's keep going then. It's nothing I can't handle. Leafpaw's upset too, she added. She hasn't said anything, but I can tell. Brambleclaw sat down and stared across the nettles to the thorn hedge around the camp, without really seeing it. He couldn't make sense of Firestar's behavior as Squirrelpaw was telling the truth about keeping quiet. Brambleclaw couldn't bring himself to think that she was lying to him, which meant there had to be another reason Firestar was angry with them both. But what on earth could it be? Perhaps we should ask him, he suggested. If he told us what the matter is, we might be able to put it right. Squirrelpaw looked doubtful, but before she could reply, Brambleclaw heard the sound of more cats pushing their way through the nettles. Springing to his paws, he whipped around to see Firestar himself, with Graystripe just behind. So, the ThunderClan leader stepped forward until he stood between his daughter and Brambleclaw. Shrupa said I'd find you here. We weren't doing anything wrong, Squirrelpaw blurted out. But I wonder what you think you are doing. Firestar gave his daughter a hard stare, and then transferred it to Brambleclaw, wasting your time for one thing. When there's work to be done. We've been working all day, Firestar, Brambleclaw meowed, ducking his head respectfully. That's true, Firestar. They have, Graystripe put in. Firestar shot a quick glance at him, but did not respond. Does that mean you think there's nothing more to do? He asked Brambleclaw. The Younger Warrior opened his mouth to protest, but his leader did not give him a chance. If you're so sure, he went on, then take a look at the elders. Frostfur got birds tangled in her pelt today. You can help her get them out. Anger flared inside Brambleclaw. That was an apprentice's task. But he could see from Firestar's cold green gaze that there was no point in arguing. He mumbled, Yes, Firestar, and padded away towards the main clearing. Once the nettles had rustled back into place, screening him from the little group of cats, he paused to hear Firestar speaking with Squirrelpaw, still in the same hard, displeased tone. Squirrelpaw, you must have better things to do than hang out with an inexperienced warrior like Brambleclaw? Stay with your mentor in the future. Bro! Firestar, you trained Brambleclaw. If he's inexperienced, then that's your fault, bro. What the? Jeez. Jesus Christ. Bye, Mikarin! Have fun at work! Brambleclaw couldn't hear Squirrelpaw's response, and it wasn't safe to say they're listening any longer. It wasn't safe to stay there listening any longer. Sadness flooded over him as he made his way to the Elder's Den. Somehow he had lost his leader's respect, and if Squirrelpaw hadn't told her father about the dream and the meeting with the other cats at Four Trees, he couldn't imagine why. No. In 2 nights' time, he was supposed to leave on his journey with the cats from the other clans to find the Sundrown place and see what Midnight told them. How could he possibly go? Brambleclaw wondered despairingly, when Firestar was watching him so closely. A chill ran through him from his ears to tail tip as he realized that to be loyal to the prophecy and to StarClan, he might have to disobey his leader. Chapter 10. Poor Brambleclaw. That's so sad. See, I was the same, Saki. I didn't like Brambleclaw the first time I read. I didn't really like the main cats of the second series, but I'm reading with an open mind this time. Firestar should understand that. What is his problem? He was a naughty little deputy warrior paw apprentice. Chapter 10. Brambleclaw scarcely slept that night, and when he did, his dreams were full of Firestar's anger and the images of his leader driving him away from the camp. When he pushed his way out of the warrior's den the next morning, he still felt exhausted, even more so when he reflected that this was his last day in camp before his journey would begin. A gray dawn light was filtering through the camp, and the wind was chilly. Tasting the air, Brambleclaw thought he could make out the first scent of approaching leaf fall. Change was on the way, he realized, whatever he and the other chosen cats tried to do. Throughout the day, he did not even bother trying to speak to Squirrelpaw. Though Firestar had not ordered them to stay apart, he obviously didn't like them being together. There was no point in deliberately looking for trouble. Brambleclaw caught a glimpse of the young apprentice leaving the camp with Dustpelt. She looked oddly subdued, with her tail trailing against the earth and her ears flat. "You look as if you lost a rabbit and found a shrew," a brisk voice spoke beside him. Brambleclaw looked up. It was Mousefur. "Do you want to come hunting with me and Spiderpaw?" the she-cat meowed. For once, Brambleclaw felt he hardly had the energy for hunting or anything else. With the journey due to start the next day, warriors were crowding around him like cats at a gathering. Was he really meant to lead 4 other cats out into the unknown, to face dangers they could not even recognize? Mousefur was still waiting for Brambleclaw to answer. He couldn't help wondering if her suggestion of hunting together was another one of Firestar's orders to keep him busy. But the brown she-cat blinked at him in a friendly way, and he realized that he would be better off hunting than hanging around camp worrying. Perhaps if he brought back plenty of prey, he would start to regain Firestar's good opinion. But the hunt didn't go well. Spiderpaw was too easily distracted, as playful as a kit on its first outing. Once, as he was creeping up on a mouse, a leaf spiraled down past his nose, and he lifted one paw to bat at it. Startled by the clumsy movement, the mouse vanished under a root. "Honestly," Mousefur sighed, "did you expect the prey to come and jump into your mouth?" "Sorry," Spiderpaw mewed, looking abashed. He made more of an effort after that. When the patrol came upon a squirrel nibbling on an acorn in the middle of a clearing, Spiderpaw began stalking it, moving each long, black leg stealthily. He was almost ready to pounce when the wind changed and carried his scent to the prey. The squirrel startled, tail flicking up, and bounded towards the edge of the clearing. "Bad luck," Brambleclaw called. Instead of answering, Spiderpaw raced after the squirrel and disappeared into the undergrowth. "Hey!" Mousefur shouted after him. "You'll never catch a squirrel like that!" Spiderpaw did not reappear, and his mentor bared her teeth in a resigned growl. "One day he'll learn." She padded off to the undergrowth to find him. Left to himself, Brambleclaw stood still, listening for the sound of prey. There was a faint rustling in the leaves under the nearest tree. A mouse appeared, scuffling after seeds. Brambleclaw dropped into a hunting crouch and crept on it, trying to make his paws float above the ground. Then he sprang and killed the prey with one swift snap. He scraped earth over it so that he could collect it later, half wishing that Mousefur had been there to see his success. At least she could have told Firestar he was still hunting well for his clan. Whatever the leader's complaint was, it couldn't be about that. Listening for more prey, promising himself one last good hunt before he left, he pricked up his ears instead at the sound of something bigger rustling among the bushes a little ways off, in the opposite direction of where Spiderpaw and Mousefur had just appeared. Brambleclaw drew air into his mouth, but he could scent nothing except ThunderClan cats. He began to pad forward, only to quicken his pace as the rustling grew louder and was followed by a furious yowl. He ran around the edge of the bramble thicket and stopped dead. There was a gorse bush in front of him, and Squirrelpaw was struggling madly among its thick, spiky branches. Her front paws were off the ground, and her fur was tangled in the thorns. Brambleclaw couldn't suppress a meow of laughter. Having fun? Instantly, Squirrelpaw's head whipped around, and her green eyes flashed fury at him. "That's right, have a good laugh, you stupid furball," she snapped. "Then maybe you'll have time to get me out of here." She sounded so much like the old Squirrelpaw rather than the dejected creature that had left the camp this morning that Brambleclaw had felt better at once. Tail waving, he strolled towards her. "How did you manage to get so stuck?" "I was chasing a vole." Squirrelpaw sounded exasperated. "Dappletail said she fancied one, so I thought I'd better oblige, seeing that Firestar seemed to want me to feed the elders, like, forever. It ran under here, and I thought there was room for me to run after it." "There isn't," Brambleclaw pointed out helpfully. "I know that now, Mousebrain. Do something!" "Keep still, then." Approaching the bush, Brambleclaw saw where the worst tangles were and began to tease out her fur, carefully using his teeth and claws. Some of the thorns pierced his nose, making his eyes water, but he kept on without complaining. Hang on, Squirrelpaw muttered after a while. "I think I'm loose." Brambleclaw jumped out of the way as the apprentice plunged forward, forepaws scrabbling the earth as she dragged her hindquarters clear of the branches. A moment later she was free, shaking herself irritably when she stared at the tufts of ginger fur she had left behind. "Thanks, Brambleclaw," she meowed. "Are you hurt at all?" he asked. "Maybe you ought to let Cinderpelt have a look." "Squirrelpaw!" Brambleclaw froze and his heart sank. He slowly turned around to see Firestar stalking towards them. The clan leader had an expression like ice in his eyes as he looked from Brambleclaw to his daughter and back again. "Is this how you obey orders?" he growled. The unfairness of Firestar's attitude took Brambleclaw's breath away. For a couple of heartbeats he couldn't find words to answer, and when he did, he knew he sounded guilty. "I'm not disobeying orders, Firestar." "Oh? I'm sorry." Firestar's voice was as dry as a sun-scorched rock. "I thought you were supposed to be on a hunting patrol. I must have heard wrong." "I am on a hunting patrol," Brambleclaw mewed desperately. Firestar made a great show of looking around. "I don't see Mousefur or Spiderpaw." "Spiderpaw went off after a squirrel," Brambleclaw pointed with his tail. "Mousefur went after him." "Why are you being so horrible?" Squirrelpaw interrupted, glaring at her father. "Brambleclaw isn't doing anything wrong." Nice, Squirrelpaw. "Brambleclaw isn't doing what he's told," Firestar growled. "This isn't the warrior code as I was taught it." Squirrelpaw sprang forward to stand nose to nose with her father and lifted her voice into a yowl of pure fury. "I was stuck in the bush. Brambleclaw helped me. It's not his fault." "Be quiet," Firestar rasped. Brambleclaw was struck by how much alike father and daughter looked, green eyes flashing, ginger pelts bristling angrily. "This has nothing to do with you." "It looks like it," Squirrelpaw argued. "You growl at Brambleclaw every time he so much as glances at me." "Silence!" Firestar hissed. Brambleclaw stared in alarm. Just at that moment, Graystripe thrust his way into the clearing, a vole clamped in his jaws. "Firestar!" he meowed, dropping his prey. "What's going on?" Firestar lashed his tail, then straightened up with an impatient shake of his head. Brambleclaw forced himself to relax the fur on his neck. "Oh, right." Graystripe's amber eyes glowed with understanding as he looked at the other cats in the clearing, and Brambleclaw realized that whatever was making Firestar act like this, his deputy knew all about it. "Come on, Firestar," he went on, patting up to the clan leader and giving him a nudge. "These two aren't doing any harm." And not much good either, Firestar retorted. He faced the two younger cats. My decisions and the order I give are for the good of the whole clan, he reminded them. If you can't understand that, then maybe you aren't fit to be a warrior. What? Squirrelpaw's jaws opened in a howl of outrage, but a furious hiss from her father silenced her. Brambleclaw was too bewildered to even try protesting. Some knowledge Firestar and Graystripe shared had turned Firestar against him. If Squirrelpaw hadn't told her father about the dream, then it had to be something else. But he had no idea what it could be, or what he could do about it. You, Firestar went on crisply, flicking his tail at Squirrelpaw. Take that wool of Graystripes to the elders, then carry on hunting for them. You, with a flick of Brambleclaw, find mouse fur and see if you can possibly bring back some fresh kill before dark. Do it now. Without waiting to see if his orders were obeyed, he whipped around and stalked off through the bushes. Graystripe paused before following him. He's got a lot on his mind, he murmured apologetically. Don't take it too much to heart. Everything will work out okay. You'll see. A yowl of Graystripe came from the direction where Firestar had disappeared. Graystripe twitched his ears, nodded farewell to the two younger cats, and hurried after his leader. Squirrelpaw stared after them. Now that Firestar had gone, she no longer had to go on defying him. Her tail drooped, and the gaze she turned on Brambleclaw was full of distress. I can't do anything right, she meowed. You heard what he said. He thinks I'm not fit to be a warrior. He'll never give me my warrior name. Brambleclaw didn't know what to say to this. His bewilderment was melting into a slow, furious anger. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong. Whatever was making Firestar behave like this, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't Squirrelpaw's either. She could be annoying, but she was loyal and hard-working apprentice. Any leader worth a couple of mouse tails could see what a great warrior she would make. He glared down at the ground, and when Squirrelpaw spoke his name, he scarcely heard her. He felt his mind clearing, like a gray sky when the wind tore the clouds away and the sun shone through. The day before, after the confrontation behind the nursery, he had felt torn between the demands of the prophecy and the loyalty to Firestar. Now he looked ahead to see day after day of struggling to please his leader with no chance of success, because he didn't know why Firestar was angry with him in the first place. There was only one solution. He must leave on the journey with only the word of StarClan to guide him, and not come back until he had discovered answers that would prove to Firestar how loyal he had been all along, or else he would not come back at all. Go on. Brambleclaw meowed roughly, nodding towards the dropped bowl. Take that back, or he'll have another go at you. What about you? Squirrelpaw, usually so bright and confident, sounded nervous. He had been about to lie to her and tell her that he was going to look for mouse fur. Then he realized how deeply betrayed she would feel when he didn't come back. After all, they were in this together, at least as far as Firestar's hostilities was concerned. I'm leaving, he told her. Leaving? Squirrelpaw echoed in dismay. Leaving ThunderClan? Not for good, Brambleclaw put in quickly. Squirrelpaw, listen. She sat in front of him, her wide green eyes never left his face as he told her about the second dream, of drowning in endless salty water and being swept towards the cave with teeth. Ravenpaw says it's a real place, he explained. I think StarClan are telling me to go there, and the other cats agree. We're starting at sunrise tomorrow. The hurt in Squirrelpaw's eyes was clear. You told them and not me? She wailed. Brambleclaw, you promised! I know. Brambleclaw felt guilt gnawing at him. I was going to, and then all this trouble with Firestar started. StarClan knows why. And if they do, they're telling me even less about it than they've told me about the prophecy. You're really going all that way? But you don't even know how far it is. None of us do, Brambleclaw admitted. But Ravenpaw has spoken to cats who have seen the place, so it must be possible to get there. I'm not coming back to camp, he added. I'll spend the night somewhere in the forest, and meet the others at 4 Trees in the morning. Please, Squirrelpaw, don't give us away. Don't tell any cat where we've gone. Bye, Mint! As he spoke, Squirrelpaw's eyes brightened until they were gleaming with excitement. Brambleclaw knew what she was going to say a heartbeat before she said it. I won't breathe a word to any cat, she promised. I can't, because I'm coming with you. Oh, no, you're not, Brambleclaw retorted. You're not one of the chosen cats. You're not even a warrior yet. Crowpaw isn't a warrior, Squirrelpaw flashed back at him. And I've been a moon... I bet a Moon of Dawn Patrol Stormfur is coming. He'd never let Feathertail go without him. So why do I have to be left out? She hesitated and then added, I didn't tell any cat about the first dream, Brambleclaw. I never said a word, not even to Leafpaw. Brambleclaw knew that was true. If Squirrelpaw had dropped even a hint, it would have been all around camp by now. I didn't promise you could come, he reminded her. I promised to tell you, and I've done that. But you can't leave me behind, Squirrelpaw cried. If I don't know what happens next, my fur will fall out and from wondering. It's just too dangerous, Squirrelpaw. Can't you see that? The prophecy is heavy enough. Wait for me to bear, without having to look after you as well. Look after me? Squirrelpaw's eyes blazed indignantly. I can look after myself, thank you. I'm coming, whether you like it or not. And if you won't let me come with you, I'll follow you. Think about what happened today. I don't want to go back to camp and be told off for nothing, over and over again, any more than you do. Brambleclaw stared at her, indecisive. He did not want the responsibility of taking a young apprentice into danger, but she would be in much more danger if she tried to follow him alone through the unknown territory. And if she returned to camp, once Firestar realized that Brambleclaw had gone missing, he would badger Squirrelpaw until she told him what she knew, and maybe even send an expedition to bring him back. For a couple of heartbeats, Brambleclaw understood what it meant to be a leader. His fur weighed down with doubts and questions, heavier than a whole river full of flood water. He heaved a sigh and seemed to go down to the tips of his paws. All right, Squirrelpaw, he meowed. You can come. Chapter 11. Where are we gonna sleep? Squirrelpaw asked. As soon as Brambleclaw agreed to take her with him on the journey, her hurt and anger had vanished like dawn mist under the hot sun. He did not think she had stopped talking for a moment since they left the clearing or Firestar had found them. Quiet, he hissed. If any cat is looking for us, they'll be able to hear you right across the forest. But where? Squirrelpaw persisted, though she did lower her voice. Somewhere not too far from 4 trees, Brambleclaw replied. Then we'll be ready to meet the others at sunrise. Darkness had fallen as he led the way through the undergrowth. Clouds had massed to cover the sky so that no gleam of star or moon broke through. A cold breeze whispered in the grass, and once again Brambleclaw tasted the scents of approaching Leafpaw. With possible pursuit in mind, he had considered finding shelter near Snake Rocks, which the clan had been ordered to avoid, but the risk of encountering the night-hunting badger was too great. Instead, he decided to make for the Thunderpath, hoping the acid smell of two-legged monsters would mask his own scent and Squirrelpaw's. I know a good tree by the Thunderpath, Squirrelpaw suggested. You can get right inside. We could hide there. And then have spiders and beetles crawling through our fur all night? Brambleclaw mewed discouragingly. No thanks. Squirrelpaw sniffed. Why do you always know better? Maybe because I'm a warrior? Distracted by a rustling in the undergrowth, the apprentice made no reply. Barely pausing to track her prey, she dived into a clump of bracken and came back a couple heartbeats later with a mouse dangling from her jaws. Well done, meowed Brambleclaw. The sight of fresh kill made him realize how hungry he was. Not long after, he managed to catch a mouse for himself, and the 2 cats paused to eat in quick, wary gulps, their ears pricked to catch the faintest traces of a ThunderClan patrol. But Brambleclaw could hear nothing except the ordinary sounds of the forest and the nearby roar of monsters on the Thunderpath. Their stench was so strong here that it masked most others, as Brambleclaw hoped, though he shrank from the thought of spending the night with that in his nostrils. While they ate, a thin, cold rain began to fall, growing steadily heavier until Brambleclaw's fur was soaked, and he was colder than he could remember feeling in moons. We need shelter, Squirrelpaw mewed, shivering. She looked small and vulnerable, with her fur plastered darkly to her body. What about finding that tree? Brambleclaw was about to agree when they emerged from the undergrowth at the top of the grassy bank, and he found himself looking down at the Thunderpath. A 2-legged monster roared past, its glaring eyes cutting shafts of yellow brightness through the night. Before it swept by, the light showed Brambleclaw a looming dark shape, the biggest monster he had ever seen, squatting on the verge of the Thunderpath. The reek of it flooded his senses. What is that? Exclaimed Squirrelpaw, brushing close beside him. I don't know, Brambleclaw admitted. I've never seen anything like it before. Stay here while I take a look. Cautiously, he padded forward until he stood a couple of fox lengths away from the monster. Was it dead? He wondered. And was that why its two-leg had abandoned it here? Or was it crouching, watching, waiting to spring as he would spring on a helpless mouse? Look, we could go underneath it, Squirrelpaw pointed out, trotting up to join him. Of course, she had not obeyed his order to wait at the top of the bank. We could shelter from the rain. There was just enough light for Brambleclaw to make out a darker gap between the monster's belly and the ground. His fur bristled at the thought of crawling into the narrow space, but he didn't want to seem a coward in front of Squirrelpaw. And her suggestion was a good one. The overwhelming scent would certainly hide them from any pursuers. Okay, he meowed, but let me... He broke off as Squirrelpaw bounded forward, flattened herself to the ground, and wriggled underneath the monster. Go first, Brambleclaw finished, resigningly following her. A faint dawn light seeping under the monster's belly rose Brambleclaw the next morning. Squirrelpaw was curled beside him. For a heartbeat, he couldn't remember why she was sleeping in his den instead of her own. Then the acrid reek of the monster and a continuous roar from the thunderpath close by reminded him where he was and why. This was the morning when the journey would really begin, but instead of excitement, he only felt uncertainty dragging at his paws, along with the dismal thought that he had as good as exiled himself from his clan by disappearing without his leader's permission. Brambleclaw crept out from beneath the monster and lifted his head to taste the air. The grass was still wet from the previous night's rain, and the bushes at the top of the bank were heavy with drops of water. Mist curled through the trees in the gray dawn. There was no sound or scent of other cats. Turning back to the monster, he called to Squirrelpaw. Wake up! It's time that we were on our ways to 4 trees. He was beginning to think he would have to slide back under the monster's belly to rouse the apprentice when she crawled out, blinking. I'm starving, she complained. We'll have time to catch prey on the way, Brambleclaw told him. But we must get moving. The others will be waiting. Okay. Squirrelpaw raced up the bank and headed towards 4 trees, following the line of the thunderpath. Brambleclaw caught up to her, and for a time the 2 cats lopped along side by side. The mist cleared and a golden light gathered on the horizon where the sun would rise. Birds began to sing in the branches overhead. When she was properly awake, Squirrelpaw seemed to forget about stopping to hunt. She hurried on, paying no attention to anything around her. Brambleclaw was torn between wanting to get to 4 trees as soon as possible and staying alert for possible trouble. When he heard rustling in the bushes behind them, he halted, his ears flicking up and jaws parted to detect the scent of their pursuer. Squirrelpaw, he hissed, get out of sight! But Squirrelpaw whirled around for a heartbeat before he spoke, and stood staring in the direction of the sound, her green eyes wide. The same moment, Brambleclaw picked up the strong, familiar scent of ThunderClan cat. Then the branches of a nearby bush quivered and parted to reveal Leafpaw. The 2 sisters stood rigid for a moment, their gazes locked together. Then Leafpaw padded forward and set down a packet of herbs she was carrying at Squirrelpaw's feet. I brought you some traveling herbs, she murmured. You're gonna need them. Brambleclaw stared from her to Squirrelpaw. I thought you said you hadn't told any cat. His voice was loud with outrage. How does she know? You've been lying to me. I have not, Squirrelpaw spat. No, she hasn't, Leafpaw's gentler voice added. But she didn't need to tell me anything. I just knew, that's all. Brambleclaw shook himself. You mean you know everything? He asked. About the dreams? And the journey to the sun-drowned place? Leafpaw turned her serious gaze on him, and he saw unhappiness and bewilderment in the depths of her eyes. No, she mewed. Only that Squirrelpaw's going away. She hesitated, closing her eyes briefly, and there will be great danger. A pang of pity for her stabbed through Brambleclaw, sharp as a thorn, but he could not afford to give in to it. He had to know what Leafpaw had done with her knowledge. Who else knows? He demanded roughly. Have you told your father? No! The flash of anger in Leafpaw's eyes suddenly made her look very much like her sister. I wouldn't tell on Squirrelpaw, not even to Firestar. She wouldn't, Brambleclaw. Squirrelpaw added. Brambleclaw nodded slowly. I almost wish I had. Leafpaw went on, bitterness in her voice. Perhaps I could have stopped it all and kept you here. Squirrelpaw, do you really have to go? I must. This is the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me. Don't you see? It's a command from StarClan, so it's not like we're gonna go against the warrior code. She began pouring out to Leafpaw the whole story of Brambleclaw's dreams and the meeting with the cats from the other clans. Leafpaw listened, her eyes widening in dismay. Brambleclaw fidgeted from paw to paw, acutely aware of the passing of time and the daylight strengthening. But you don't need to go, Leafpaw wailed when Squirrelpaw had finished. You haven't been chosen. Well, I'm not going back. I can't do anything right as far as Firestar's concerned. Do you know he even told me I might not be fit to be a warrior? I'll show him whether I'm fit or not. Brambleclaw glanced at Leafpaw. She knew as well as he did how useless it was to argue with Squirrelpaw when she made up her mind. There was something else, too, in Leafpaw's amber eyes, a hint of trouble, as if she knew more than she was telling. You might not come back. Leafpaw's voice shook, and Brambleclaw was reminded even more forcibly that, as well as the medicine cat, Leafpaw was Squirrelpaw's sister. What will I do without you? It'll be okay, Leafpaw. Brambleclaw was amazed at the gentleness of Squirrelpaw's voice and the way that she pressed her muzzle comfortingly against her sister's side. I've got to go. You do see that, don't you? Leafpaw nodded. And you won't tell anyone where we've gone? Squirrelpaw pressed. I don't know where you're going, and neither do you, Leafpaw pointed out. But no, I won't say anything. Just remember that Firestar does love you. He has things on his mind that you know nothing about. She drew in a shaky breath. Now take the herbs and go. Squirrelpaw dabbed at the packet of herbs, dividing them between herself and Brambleclaw. As they gulped down the bitter-tasting leaves, Leafpaw looked on, her eyes huge and somber. Even if you don't have a medicine cat with you, you can still find herbs as you go along. Don't forget marigold for wounds, she meowed rapidly, and tansy for coughs. Oh, and juniper berries for bellyaches, and borage leaves are best for fever, if you can find any. She sounded as if she were trying to pass the whole of her training in a few moments as she left. We won't forget, Squirrelpaw promised. She finished the last mouthful of herbs and swiped her tongue around her mouth. Come on, Brambleclaw. Goodbye, Leafpaw. Brambleclaw mewed. You and the rest of the clan, take care. If trouble is really coming to the forest, we might not be back in time to help you fight it. That is in the paws of StarClan, Leafpaw agreed sadly. I will do my best to be ready, I promise. And don't worry about Squirrelpaw, Brambleclaw added. I'll look after her. And I'll look after him. Squirrelpaw flashed him a challenging look before padding up to her sister and touching noses with her. We will come back, she murmured. Leafpaw dipped her head, sadness clouding her eyes. As Brambleclaw headed once again for 4 trees, he glanced back to see her watching them, a motionless light brown figure against the ferns. As he raised his tail in a gesture of farewell, she turned swiftly, and the undergrowth swallowed her up. Chapter 12. Leafpaw caught a vole on her way back to camp, and slipped down the ravine with it clumped in her jaws, hoping that any cat who saw her would think she had just been out on an early hunting expedition. Her mind was still whirling with her sister's departure, and how the prophecies of StarClan seemed to be gathering around Squirrelpaw and Brambleclaw like mist clinging to the branches of a gorse bush. As she emerged into the clearing, she heard Mousefur's voice raised loudly. That Brambleclaw's a lazy lump. It's well past sunrise and he isn't up yet. I want him for a hunting patrol. I'll wake him. Brightheart, who was sitting with Mousefur near the nettle patch, got up and went to the warrior's den. Leafpaw felt a cold knot in her belly at the thought of what would happen when the rest of ThunderClan discovered that Brambleclaw and Squirrelpaw had vanished. At that moment, Dustpelt appeared from the nursery and padded over to the apprentice's den, where Whitepaw and Shrewpaw were sunning themselves. Hi, the brown warrior greeted them. Have you seen Squirrelpaw? She's not ill, is she? She's usually raring to go by now, before I've even had time for a piece of fresh kill. Whitepaw and Shrewpaw exchanged a glance. We haven't seen her, Whitepaw mewed. She didn't sleep in the den last night. Leafpaw saw Dustpelt roll his eyes. What is she up to now? Brightheart pushed her way out of the warrior's den and bounded across to Mousefur. Leafpaw trotted across the fresh kill pile with her vole so that she could hear what they were saying. Brambleclaw is not there, Brightheart reported. What? Mousefur's tail twitched in surprise. Where is he then? Brightheart shrugged. He must have gone hunting on his own. Never mind, Mousefur. Cloudtail and I will come with you. Fine. Mousefur shrugged, and as soon as Cloudtail emerged from the den, blinking sleep out of his eyes, she roused Spiderpaw and all 4 cats left the camp. Hi, Juice! Meanwhile, Dustpelt was headed for the fresh kill pile, irritably calling on StarClan to tell him how he was supposed to mentor an apprentice if she never was where she was meant to be. If you see her sister, he growled to Leafpaw, tell her I'm in the nursery, and she'd better have a good excuse for going off on her own again. He snatched up a starling and headed back to Ferncloud. Leafpaw watched him go before headed for the fern tunnel that led to the medicine cat's den. She was relieved that Dustpelt had not stopped to question her about Squirrelpaw. But she knew that as time went on, the 2 cats did not return. There would certainly be questions, lots of them, and she had no idea at all how to answer them. By midday, gossip was beginning to fly around camp. On her way through the main clearing to fetch fresh kill for Cinderpelt, Leafpaw overheard Firestar ordering the patrols to keep an eye open for the 2 missing cats. So, Brambleclaw is patting after Squirrelpaw, is he? Cloudtail remarked, his eyes gleaming with amusement. Well, she is a very attractive young cat. I'll say that for her. I can't think of what they're up to. Firestar sounded more annoyed than worried. I'll have something to say to both of them when they come back. Leafpaw crouched down, pretending to be choosing the best piece of prey, while the warriors dispersed, leaving her father and mother alone together. You know, Sandstorm meowed to Firestar, Greystripe told me what happened last night. When he found them hunting alone, sounds as if Squirrelpaw and Brambleclaw haven't been back since. From what Greystripe said about the way you spoke to them, I'm not surprised they want to get away for a while. Surely I didn't upset them that much. Firestar sounded anxious. Not enough to leave camp? Sandstorm gave him a direct look from wide green eyes just like Squirrelpaw's. I've told you over and over again that you don't go anywhere with Squirrelpaw by criticizing her and ordering her around. She'll just do the opposite, just to be difficult. I know. Firestar let out a heavy sigh. It's just this prophecy. Fire and Tiger together, trouble for the forest. I thought after we dealt with Blood Clan, the cat clans would be at peace. We've had many moons of peace. Sandstorm padded up to Firestar and pressed her muzzle against his cheek. All thanks to you. If there is more trouble to come, it's not your fault. I've been thinking about that omen, she went on, sitting down with a quick glance around to make sure none of the warriors were in earshot. Leafpaw gave a guilty start, wondering if she should creep up out of the shadow on the far side of the fresh kill pile. But if her mother knew she was there, she paid no attention to her. After all, Leafpaw already knew about the StarClan message. It mentions fire and tiger, and trouble, Sandstorm continued, but it doesn't say the fire and tiger will cause the trouble, does it? Leafpaw saw a shiver run through Firestar's body, rippling his flame-colored fur. You're right, he murmured. The prophecy might mean they'll save us from trouble. It might. Firestar straightened up, suddenly looking very young. Then that's even more important to get them back, he burst out. I'll lead the patrol myself. I'll come with you, mewed Sandstorm. Raising her voice, she added, Leafpaw, you've had time to sniff every piece of fresh kill on that pile. Cinderpelt will be waiting. And remember that you've promised not to say anything to any cat about the message from StarClan. Yes, Sandstorm. Leafpaw grabbed a vole and headed back to the medicine cat's den. She wondered if she ought to confess what her sister had told her about the journey, but she had promised Squirrelpaw to keep silent too. The weight of the 2 secret prophecies weighed down on her fur like raindrops. She did not know how she would manage to keep both of her promises and stay faithful to her vows as a medicine cat to act only for the good of the clan, all at the same time. For the rest of the day, Cinderpelt kept Leafpaw busy going over their stocks of herbs, sorting out what needed to be replenished before leaffall set in for good. The sun was going down and the air growing cool with the scent of damp leaves when they heard the noise of a cat brushing through the fern tunnel. It's Cinderpelt. Oh, sorry. It's Firestar, Cinderpelt meowed, glancing out of the mouth of the den. You carry on with that. I'll see what he wants. Leafpaw was thankful to stay hidden in the hollow rock and count juniper berries. She caught a glimpse of her father in the clearing outside, the sun turning his pelt into brilliant flame, and shrank further back so that he would not see her. There's no sign of them anywhere. Firestar sounded weary. I tried to follow their scent, but the rain last night must have washed it away. They could be anywhere. Cinderpelt, what do you think I should do? I don't see what else you can do, except stop worrying. Cinderpelt's voice was brisk but sympathetic. I remember a couple of apprentices who were always sneaking off one way for one reason or another. No harm ever came to them. Me and Graystripe? That was different. Squirrelpaw has a young, strong warrior with her. Brambleclaw will look after her. There was a short silence. Leafpaw risked another glance out of the opening of the rock to see her father sitting with his head bowed. He looked utterly defeated, and Leafpaw's heart twisted in pity. She wanted to go and comfort him, but there was no comfort she could give without breaking her word. It's my fault, Firestar went on in a low, shaken voice. I should have never said what I did. If they don't come back, I'll never forgive myself. Of course they'll come back. The forest is safe at the moment. Wherever they are, they will be well fed and sheltered. Maybe. Firestar didn't sound convinced. Without saying any more, he got up and disappeared into the fern tunnel. When he had gone, Cinderpelt came back to the cave. Leafpaw, she meowed, do you know where your sister is now? Leafpaw chased with her paw after a juniper berry that had rolled across the floor, not wanting to meet her mentor's gaze. When she thought about Squirrelpaw, she had a sensation of warmth and safety and the presence of other cats. She guessed they were at Ravenpaw's barn, but she couldn't be sure. She answered truthfully. No, Cinderpelt. I don't know where she is. Leafpaw was aware of Cinderpelt's gaze, and she looked up from her mentor's blue eyes to see no anger there, only deep pools of wisdom and understanding. If you did know, you would tell me, wouldn't you? A medicine cat's loyalties are not the same as other cats. But in the end, we are all loyal to StarClan and the 4 clans in the forest. Leafpaw nodded, and to her relief, her mentor turned away to start examining their stalks of marigold leaves. I didn't lie to her, Leafpaw told herself miserably. But it didn't help. StarClan's prophecy or not, she knew the warrior code as well as any other cat. One of the worst things an apprentice could do was lie to her mentor, and even though the words she had spoken had been the exact truth, Leafpaw felt desperately guilty. Oh, Squirrelpaw, she protested. Why did you have to go? Chapter 13. Did she kill someone? Who? Squirrelpaw? No, they're just running away because they have a prophecy to fulfill. They're going on a journey! Journey, 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 journey. Alright. Chapter 13. The death toll is for Willowpelt, I believe? Yeah, Willowpelt is dead. We're gonna add every single death to the death toll. It's very exciting. Chapter 13. This isn't the quickest way to 4 trees, Squirrelpaw protested when Brambleclaw paused at the edge of a bramble thicket. She flicked her tail. We should be going that way. Fine. Brambleclaw sighed. Squirrelpaw had been unusually quiet after saying goodbye to her sister, but unfortunately, the silence hadn't lasted. Go that way, if you feel like a swim. Oh, sorry. Go that way if you feel like a swim. This way the stream is narrower, and there's a rock we can use to jump across. Oh, okay. Squirrelpaw seemed disconcerted for a moment, but then she shrugged and raced through the trees at Brambleclaw's side. They crossed the stream in a couple of bounds and headed up to the last slope that led to 4 trees. Brambleclaw realized that the whole disk of the sun had risen above the horizon by the time they reached the edge of the hollow. He paused, sweeping his tail to hold back Squirrelpaw so that she wouldn't go dashing into the clearing before they knew what they would find there. Drinking in the air, he could taste the mingling scents of 3 other clans, and when he looked down the slope, he saw Tawny Pelt, Feathertail, and Stormfur sitting beside the base of the great rock, while Crowpaw paced restlessly up and down in front of them. At last! Tawny Pelt sprang to her paws as Brambleclaw and Squirrelpaw burst out of the bushes at the foot of the slope. We thought you weren't coming. We thought you weren't coming. We thought we weren't coming. I'm trying to give her a deeper voice. What's she doing here? Crowpaw demanded, glaring at Squirrelpaw. Squirrelpaw returned the glare, her neck fur bristling angrily. I can speak for myself, thanks. I'm coming with you. What? Tawnypelt padded up to her brother's side. Brambleclaw, have you lost your mind? You can't bring in an apprentice. This is gonna be dangerous. Before Brambleclaw could reply, Squirrelpaw hissed, He's an apprentice! And flicked her tail at Crowpaw. I was chosen by StarClan, Crowpaw pointed out immediately. You weren't! Seeming to think that settled it, he sat down and started to wash his ears. He's not chosen either, Squirrelpaw protested, transferring the glare to Stormfur. Don't tell me he's just here to say goodbye to his sister. The two RiverClan cats said nothing, just exchanged a worried glance. She's coming, and that's that. Brambleclaw patience was rapidly running out. At this rate, the mission would fall apart in bickering and bad-tempered before they had even started. Now, let's get going. Don't order me around, Crowpaw snapped. No, he's right. Tawnypelt sighed. If we can't stop Squirrelpaw coming... You can't, Squirrelpaw put in. Then we might as well get moving to make the best of it. To Brambleclaw's relief, even Crowpaw seemed to see sense to that. He got to his paws, turning his back on Squirrelpaw as if she didn't exist. Pity you can't leave your clan without dragging along a burr in your pelt, he jeered at Brambleclaw. The two RiverClan cats rose too, and padded up to join the group. Don't worry, Feathertail murmured, touching Squirrelpaw's shoulder briefly with her muzzle. We're all feeling a bit nervous. It'll be better once we're on our way. Squirrelpaw's eyes flashed as if she were about to make a sharp reply, but meeting Feathertail's gentle gaze, she clearly thought better of it and dipped her head, her neck fur beginning to lie flat again. Thank you for the leg, Cody! As if obeying an unspoken command, all 6 cats padded through the bushes to the top of the slope, emerging at the edge of WindClan territory. When Brambleclaw looked out on the moorland slopes, the tough, springy grass ruffled by the wind like the fur of a huge animal, his heart pounded until he thought it would burst right out of his chest. This was the moment he had been waiting for, ever since Bluestar had spoken to him in his dream. The time of the new prophecy was here. His journey had begun. But as he took his first steps across the moor, he was pierced by a sharp pang of regret for everything he was leaving behind. The familiar forest, his place in the clan, his friends. From now on, everything would be different. Can we really live by the warrior code outside the forest? Brambleclaw wondered. Glancing back to the dark line of trees, he added silently, Will any of us ever see our clans again? Brambleclaw crouched in shelter of a hedge and looked down at the clustering buildings of a 2-leg farm. Behind him, the other cats shifted restlessly. What are we waiting for? Crowpaw demanded. That's the barn where Ravenpaw and Barley live, Brambleclaw replied, indicating with his tail. Yes, I know, yelled the WindClan apprentice. Mudclaw took me there when I made my apprentice journey to the Highstones. We're not stopping there now, are we? I think perhaps we should. Brambleclaw was careful not to sound as if he were giving the touchy apprentice an order. Ravenpaw knows about the sun-drowned place. He might be able to tell us something useful. And his barn is crawling with mice. Tawnypelt swiped her tongue around her whiskers. We could do worse than spend the night there, Brambleclaw agreed. A couple of good meals will help us bring our strength. But we could easily make it to Highstones before dark if we kept going, Crowpaw pointed out. Brambleclaw suspected uncharitability that the WindClan apprentice was arguing just for the sake of it. I still think it might be best if we stay here for tonight, he meowed. This way we'll get to Highstones early next morning, with most of the day to get a good start in unknown territory. Would you rather sleep on bare stone with no prey? Stormfur murmured, or warm and comfortable with full stomach? I vote for Barley's barn. Me too. You don't get a vote, Crowpaw retorted. Squirrelpaw refused to be crushed. Green eyes gleaming with anticipation, she sprang to her paws. Let's go! No, wait. Feathertail pushed in front of the eager apprentice a heartbeat before Brambleclaw. There are rats around here. We have to be careful. Dogs too, Tawnypelt added. Oh, okay. Brambleclaw remembered that Squirrelpaw hadn't yet made the journey at all that all the apprentices took to Highstones before they could be made into warriors. In fact, this must be the first time she'd left ThunderClan territory beyond 4 trees. Privately, he admitted that she had done well so far, crossing WindClan territory without fuss and being sensible about avoiding WindClan patrols so that Crowpaw's departure could remain secret. Perhaps she would cope better than he first feared with the longer path that lay ahead of them. Brambleclaw emerged from the hedge that led the way past the farm buildings towards the barn. He froze briefly when he heard the barking of a dog, but it sounded distant, and the scent that came with it was fate. "Get on, if we're going," Crowpaw muttered at his shoulder. The barn was some ways away from the main 2-leg nest. There were holes in the roof, and the doors sagged on its supports. Brambleclaw approached warily and sniffed at the gap at the bottom of the door. The scent of mouse flooded his senses. His mouth started to water, and he had to concentrate hard to distinguish the cat scent that was almost drowned out. A familiar voice spoke just from inside. "I smells ThunderClan cats. Come in, and welcome." It was Ravenpaw. Brambleclaw slid through the gap to see the sleek black loner standing just in front of him. Barley, the black and white cat who had shared the barn with him, was crouched a pace or two behind him, his eyes widening uneasily as Brambleclaw's companion slipped in as well. God, I'm so sorry, there's a dog barking outside. It's atmospheric, because there's definitely dogs around the barn. Brambleclaw realized that Barley had probably not seen so many cats since he came to the forest to help the clan's fight against BloodClan 4 seasons ago. "I took your advice, Ravenpaw," Brambleclaw meowed. "I think StarClan sent me the dreams because they want me to travel to the Sundrown place. These are the cats StarClan has chosen to go as well." "Or some of us are," Crowpaw muttered disagreeably. Brambleclaw ignored him and introduced the rest of the cats to Ravenpaw and Barley. The older loner merely dipped his head in greeting and slid away into the shadowy depths of the barn. Introvert energy. "Firestar's daughter! I've seen you before, when you were a kitten in the nursery with Sandstorm, but you won't remember that. I said then that you would look just like your father, and now I see I was right." Squirrelpaw scuffled her paws in embarrassment. Brambleclaw guessed she was for once lost for words to meet this cat who played such a large part of the history of her clan. "What does Firestar think about the journey?" Ravenpaw asked Brambleclaw. "I'm surprised he let Squirrelpaw go so far when she isn't a warrior yet." Brambleclaw and Squirrelpaw exchanged an uneasy glance. "It wasn't quite like that," Brambleclaw admitted. "We left without telling him." Ravenpaw's eyes widened with shock, and for a heartbeat Brambleclaw wondered if he would send them away again. But Ravenpaw only shook his head. "I'm sorry to hear that you couldn't tell him what's going on," he meowed. "Perhaps you'll tell me more when you've eaten. Are you all hungry?" "Starving!" Squirrelpaw exclaimed. A growl of laughter escaped Ravenpaw. "Feel free to hunt," he invited them. "There are plenty of mice." A short time later, Brambleclaw was curled up comfortably in the straw, his stomach stuffed full of mice that had almost lined up to leap into his mouth. If Ravenpaw hadn't and barely ate like this every day, it was no wonder they looked so strong and healthy. His companions were sprawled around him, equally full and growing sleepy as the sun went down, sending shafts of red light through the holes in the barn roof. All around they could hear scuffling noises and faint squeaking in the straw, as if their hunt had made no difference at all to the number of prey. "If you don't mind, we'll sleep here tonight and leave first thing in the morning," Brambleclaw meowed. Ravenpaw nodded. "I'll come with you as far as Highstones." Before Brambleclaw could protest, there was no need, he went on. "There are even more 2-legs than before around the Thunder Path. I've been keeping an eye on them, so I know the safest ways to go." Brambleclaw thanked him, only to feel Crowpaw shift closer to him and mutter into his ears, "Can we trust him?" Ravenpaw's ears twitched. He had obviously heard the remark. Brambleclaw thought he was going to sink through the floor with embarrassment, and Squirrelpaw lifted her head to aim a furious hiss at Crowpaw. "Don't be angry with him," Ravenpaw meowed. "That's good thinking, Crowpaw. Thinking like a warrior, in fact. Where you're going, you must trust nothing and no cat without very good reason." Crowpaw ducked his head, looking pleased at the loner's praise. "But you can trust me," Ravenpaw continued. "I may not be able to do much to help with the rest of your journey, but the least I can do is get to you. The least I can see that you get to Highstone safely." Wind struck Brambleclaw squarely in the face, flattening his to his sides and almost carrying him off his paws. When he unsheathed his claws to steady himself, they scraped along against bare rock. He and his companions were standing on the summit of high stones, gazing out over the endless unknown territories. They set out in the first faint light of dawn, and reached to the stony slopes well before sun-high, led swiftly by Ravenpaw. He stood beside Brambleclaw now, his ears pricked into the distance. "You'll avoid that tangle of thunderpaths," he meowed, pointing with his tail to the thick gray smudge in the land shape. "Just as well. That's the place where WindClan took refuge when Broken Star drove them out. It's full of rats and carrion." "I know about that," Squirrelpaw put in. "Graystripe told me how he and Firestar went to fetch WindClan back." "There are many smaller thunderpaths to cross," Ravenpaw went on, "and two-leg nests to avoid. I've traveled that way now and again. Not far, but far enough to know that it's not a place for warriors." Squirrelpaw shot a nervous glance at Ravenpaw. "Is there no more forest at all?" she asked. "Not that I saw." "Don't worry," Brambleclaw meowed reassuringly. "I'll look after you." To his surprise, she whirled on him, the light of fury in her green eyes. "How many times do I have to tell you? I don't need looking after," she spat. "You're gonna behave like Firestar all the way to the Sundran place. I might as well have stayed home." "Oh, don't we wish you did," Crowpaw murmured, rolling his eyes. Tawnypelt gave Squirrelpaw a curious glance. "Are you gonna let an apprentice talk to you like that?" she asked her brother. Brambleclaw shrugged. "You try stopping her." Her sister's ears twitched. ThunderClan. Feathertail exchanged a glance with Stormfur, and then padded up to Squirrelpaw's side. "I'm nervous too," she admitted. "I get shivers all along my spine when I think of being so close to all those two legs, but StarClan will bring us through." Squirrelpaw nodded, though her eyes were still troubled. "If you've all quite finished," Crowpaw mewed loudly, "it's time we were moving." "Okay." Brambleclaw turned to Ravenpaw. "Thank you for everything," he meowed. "It makes a difference that you understand why we're doing this." The loner dipped his head. "Think nothing of it. Good luck, all of you, and may StarClan light your path." He stood aside, and one by one the 6 cats began to pick their way down the far slope of the hill, the rising sun casting long blue shadows in front of them as they took the first steps on the longest journey of their lives. Chapter 14. Brambleclaw heaved a sigh of relief to come down from high stones and feel the grass under his paws again. They were alone now, a tiny band of cats in a vast unknown territory. Ravenpaw had pointed out a path across the fields, divided by sharp, shiny two-leg fences, and there was many scents of two-legs and dogs, though none of them were fresh. Woolly-faced sheep stared at the traveling cats as they slipped past, and their heads and their ears flat, uncomfortable at being out in the open. "You'd think they'd never seen a cat before," Stormfur grunted. "Maybe they haven't," Tawnypelt replied. "There's no reason for cats to come here. I haven't had so much as a sniff of prey since we left the barn." "Well, I've never seen a sheep before," Squirrelpaw pointed out. She padded a little closer to the nearest one, and Brambleclaw unobtrusively moved up behind her. As far as he knew, sheep were not dangerous, but he was taking no chances. "Dawn Stealer, thank you for the hydrate!" Good night, Dawn! Sleep well. Thank you! Squirrelpaw paused a tail length away, took a good sniff, and wrinkled her nose. Yuck! They might look like fluffy clouds on legs, but they smell horrible! Tawnypelt yawned. "Can we get on, for the love of StarClan?" "I wonder why StarClan are sending us to the Sundran place," Feathertail meowed, swerving to avoid a grass-chopping sheep that was too close for comfort. "Why couldn't they have told us what we needed to know back in the forest? And why do we have to hear the messages at midnight?" Crowpaw snorted. "Who knows?" He narrowed his eyes and stared at Brambleclaw. "Maybe the ThunderClan warrior can tell us. After all, he's the only one of us who has seen this place. Or so he says." Brambleclaw gritted his teeth. You know as much as I do, he meowed. We just have to trust StarClan that it will all come clear in the end. Easy enough for you to say, Crowpaw retorted. Leave him alone! To Brambleclaw's amazement, Squirrelpaw darted forward and planted herself in front of the WindClan apprentice. Brambleclaw didn't ask for the second dream. It's not his fault that StarClan chose him. And what do you know about that? Crowpaw growled. In WindClan, apprentices know when to keep their mouth shut. Oh, so you'll be quiet from now on? Squirrelpaw mewed cheekily. Good! With his top lip drawn back into a snarl, Crowpaw stalked around her and went on. Brambleclaw patted across to his clanmate. Thanks for backing me up there, he murmured. Squirrelpaw's eyes flashed angrily at him. I'm not doing it for you, she snapped. I'm just not letting that stupid furball think WindClan is so much better than ThunderClan. She dashed off with an annoyed hiss, past Feathertail and Stormfur, who had stopped to watch. Don't get too far ahead, Brambleclaw called after her, but she ignored him. As he set off in pursuit, Brambleclaw was uncomfortably aware that none of the other cats had tried to defend him, not even Tawnypelt. They must all be full of doubts about his vision of the sun-drowned place and why they had to go there. Just like Feathertail, a sense of responsibility was settling more heavily on Brambleclaw with every step he took, and he knew that if any of his companions were injured or even killed on the journey, it would be his fault. Perhaps StarClan had gotten it wrong this time. Perhaps in the end, not even the faith and courage of warriors would be enough to bring them through safely. Not long after Sunhigh, they came to their first thunderpath. It was narrower than the one they were used to, and curved so that they could not see the monsters approaching until the last moment. On the opposite side, a tall hedge stretched as far as they could see on both directions. Crowpaw approached cautiously and sniffed the hard black edge of Thunderpath. Ugh! He exclaimed, wrinkling his nose. It's foul stuff! Why do two legs spread it all over the place? Their monsters travel on it, Stormfur told him. I know that! Crowpaw snapped. Their monsters stink, too. Stormfur shrugged. That's two legs for you. Are we gonna sit here until sunset discussing the habits of two legs? Tawnypelt interrupted. Or are we gonna cross this thunderpath? Brambleclaw crouched on the grass verge, his ears pricked to catch the sound of approaching monsters. When I say now, run, he told Squirrelpaw, who was crouching beside him. You'll be fine. Squirrelpaw didn't look at him. She had been in a bad mood ever since her earlier quarrel with Crowpaw. I'm not scared, you know, she hissed. Then you should be, Tawnypelt grunted from her other side. Don't you listen to what we told you when we crossed the thunderpath near Highstones? Get this straight. They're dangerous, even for experienced warriors. Cats have died on them. Squirrelpaw glanced up at her and nodded, her green eyes huge. Good, mewed the Shadow Clan warrior. Go listen to Brambleclaw. When he tells you to go, run like you've never run before. Oh. How do I? There. Before we cross, Brambleclaw raised his voice so that all cats could hear him. I think we should decide what we're going to do on the other side. We can't see beyond that hedge, and I can't pick up any scents from the reek of the thunderpath. Stormfur raised his head and opened his jaws to taste the air. Nor can I. He's agreed. I suggest we cross, go straight through the hedge, and meet up again on the other side. If there's anything dangerous through there, the six of us together should be able to deal with it. Brambleclaw was impressed by Stormfur's sensible thinking. Okay, he meowed, and the rest of the cats, even Crowpaw, murmured their assent. Brambleclaw, you give the word. Once more, Brambleclaw strained to listen. A low growling in the distance quickly grew into a roar, and a monster leaped around from the bend. Its unnatural, shiny pelt gleaming as it swept past. It buffeted the cats with a hot, gritty wind and left them choking on the reek it left behind. Almost at once, another monster passed, going in the other direction. Then quiet fell again, heavy like a blanket of snow. When Brambleclaw pricked his ears, he could not hear nothing. He could hear nothing but a distant dog barking. Now! He yowled. He sprang forward, aware of Squirrelpaw keeping pace with him on one side and Feathertail on the other. His paws pattered against the hard surface of the thunderpath. Then he reached the narrow strip of grass on the other side and was thrusting through the hedge, spiky branches snagging his fur. Pushing hard, he burst into the open. For a moment, he could not make sense of what he saw, and almost froze in panic. He caught a glimpse of leaping flame, and an acrid tang of smoke filled his throat. There was a high-pitched shout, and a two-legged kit came running towards him, not much taller than a fox, with thick, unsteady legs. The barking of dog was suddenly much louder. "Squirrel Paw, stay with me!" he gasped. But when he turned to look for her, the ginger apprentice had disappeared. He heard Stormfur yowling, "Stay together! Over here!" Oh, mods are sleeping, I guess. The barking, Brambleclaw glanced around, but he could not see any of his companions, and his paws were carrying him into the depths of a holly bush. The closest refuge he could see. His belly brushed the earth. He crawled into shelter and felt himself pressed up against fur. He heard a frightened whimper. In the dim light, he made out the flecked gray pelt and recognized Feathertail. "It's only me," he murmured. "Brambleclaw." Feathertail's voice was shaking. "For a moment I thought it was that dog." "Have you seen the others?" Brambleclaw asked her. "Did you see where Squirrelpaw went?" Feathertail shook her head, her blue eyes wide with fear. "Don't worry, I'm sure they're fine," he mewed, giving her ear a comforting link. "I'll see what's happening out there." He crept forward a couple of tail lengths until he could peer out. The fire, he realized thankfully, was only a heap of burning branches, confined in a small area not far from where he had broken in. A fully grown two-leg was feeding more branches into it. The two-leg kit had joined him. Brambleclaw could still hear the dog barking, but he could not see it, and the smoke prevented him from scenting it. More importantly, he could not see any of his missing companions. Wiggling back to Feathertail, he whispered, "Come on, follow me. The two-legs aren't paying any attention." "What about the dog?" "I don't know where that is, but it isn't here. Listen, this is what we'll do." Brambleclaw knew that he had to come up with a plan right away, to get Feathertail out of there before panic froze her completely. Their holly bush was growing close to a wooden fence, and a little further along a small tree stretched its branches into the next garden. "Over there," he meowed, twitching his ears towards it. "Climb the tree, then we can get on top of the fence. We can go anywhere from there." He wondered briefly what he would do if Feathertail was so spooked that she refused to move, but the gray she-cat nodded determinedly. "Now?" she asked. "Yes, I'll be right behind you." At once, Feathertail dived out of their refuge, raced along the bottom of the fence, and took a flying leap into the tree. Brambleclaw, hard on her paws, heard the two-legged kit shout again. Then he was crawling at the trunk, scrambling hard until he reached the first safety of a branch and the shelter of thick leaves. He caught Feathertail's scent and saw her blue eyes peering worriedly at him. "Brambleclaw," she mewed, "I think we found the dog." She twitched her whiskers to point into the next garden. Brambleclaw peered out of the leaves and saw the dog, a huge brown brute, leaping up and scraping the fence with blunt claws in its efforts to climb up and attack them. As Brambleclaw peered down, it let out a flurry of hysterical barking. "Fox dung!" Brambleclaw spat at it. He wondered what their chances would be of escaping along the top of the fence, but it was flimsier than the ones he had scaled at the edge of ThunderClan territory, and the dog was shaking it so much that any cat trying to balance there was likely to be flung off into the garden. Brambleclaw imagined those teeth meeting his leg or neck and decided that they were better off staying put. "We'll never find the others at this rate," Feathertail whimpered. Then Brambleclaw heard the door of the two-leg nest open. A fully grown two-leg stood there, shouting at the dog. Still barking wildly, the creature kept up its attack on the fence. The two-leg shouted again and strode into the garden, grabbing the dog by its collar and dragged it, protestingly, into the nest. The door slammed shut. The barking continued for a moment longer, and then stopped. "See?" Brambleclaw meowed to Feathertail. "Even two-legs have their uses." Feathertail nodded. Her eyes filled with relief. Brambleclaw slipped out of the tree to the top of the fence and, balancing carefully, padded along until he reached the hedge that bordered the thunder path. From here, he had a good view of the gardens on either side. Everything seemed quiet. "I can't hear or see the others," Feathertail mewed as she joined him. "No, but that could be a good sign," Brambleclaw pointed out. "If the two-leg has caught him, they would make such a racket we'd bound to hear it." He wasn't sure if that was quite true, but it seemed to reassure Feathertail. What do you think we should do? She asked. The danger is inside these gardens, Brambleclaw decided. We'll be safer on the other side of the hedge, beside the thunder path. The monsters won't bother us if we stick to the verge, and once we get to the end of these two-leg nests, there won't be any more problems. But what about the others? This was the question Brambleclaw couldn't answer. It was impossible to look for their companions with dogs and two legs all around. Anxiety stabbed deep in his belly when he thought of Squirrelpaw alone and bewildered in this strange and frightening place. They'll probably do the same, he meowed, hoping he sounded convincing. They might even be waiting for us. If not, I'll come back and have a look after dark, or the two legs will be in their nests. Feathertail nodded tensely, and both cats jumped down from the fence, landing lightly on their forepaws on short, bright green grass. They slipped back through the hedge and along the thunder path, keeping well away from its smooth black surface. Monsters passed from time to time, but Brambleclaw was so worried about the missing cats that he hardly noticed the guttural roar and the rush of wind that rocked him on his paws. Eventually they came to the end of the hedge. The thunder path curved away to join another, a little way ahead. Between the two was a wedge of open ground, almost covered by a tangle of hawthorn bushes. On the other side of the thunder path, fields stretched away into the distance. A cold breeze ruffled the fur on Brambleclaw's flank as he gazed across the fields to where the sun was beginning to set. Thanks, StarClan, Feathertail breathed. Brambleclaw led the way into the bushes. They would be safer there, and some of their friends might already be waiting. Leaving Feathertail to keep a lookout, he plunged deeper, searching and calling out the names in a low voice. There was no reply, and he could not pick up any familiar scents. When he returned to Feathertail, she was sitting with her tail wrapped around her paws. A dead mouse lay beside her. Do you want to share? She meowed. I caught it, but I don't really feel like eating right now. The sight of prey reminded Brambleclaw how hungry he was. He had eaten well that morning in Ravenpaw's barn, but they had traveled a long way since then. Are you sure? I can catch one for myself. No, go on. She shoved the mouse towards him with one paw. Thanks. Brambleclaw crouched beside her and took a bite, the warm flavors flooding into his mouth. Try not to worry, he meowed as Feathertail bent her head to take a half-hearted mouthful. I'm sure we'll meet up with the others soon. Feathertail stopped eating to give him an anxious look. I hope so. It feels weird being without Stormfur. We've always been closer than most littermates. I suppose it comes from having a father in a different clan. Brambleclaw nodded, remembering how close he had felt to Tawny Pelt when they were kits, as they struggled to make sense of their blood-stained heritage from their father, Tigerstar. Of course, you'll understand that, Feathertail invited him with a twitch of her ears to take more of the mouse. Yeah, Brambleclaw replied. He shrugged. But I don't miss my father as much as you, Miss Greystripe. I wish I could honor his memory, but I can't. Hi, Paolo! That must be very hard. Feathertail pressed her muzzle against his shoulders. At least we see Greystripe at gatherings. And we were so proud when he was made clan deputy. He's proud of you, too, mewed Brambleclaw, glad to leave the subject of his father behind. He took the remaining share of the mouse while Feathertail forced herself to finish hers, he began to plan what they should do next. Venturing out of the bushes, he could see the sun setting in rays of fire, blazing out the path that they must take. But there was no hope of continuing until they found the others. They're not here, Feathertail murmured, padding up to join him so that her breath was soft against his ear. No, I'll have to go back. You stay here in case... A furious yowling interrupted him, the voice of angry, frightened cats coming from the last garden in the row. Springing to his paws, he met Feathertail's startled glance. There they are, he gasped, and they're in trouble. Chapter 50. I'm really hot. Hold on. I'll take off my blanket. Guys, I have to take a shower after this. 'Cause I'm stinky. How am I? I'm pretty good today. I'm happy. I'm reading. happy too. How are you today? We're about halfway through this novel now, I believe. I'm just fine, just a little tired. What time is it for you right now? Probably pretty late. Or early if it's past like midnight. Oh, it's not that late. But that's I mean, technically that's my bedtime, but... Okay, guys, I think we might not actually read as much as I thought we were going to read this time. I'm going to finish chapter 15 and then maybe end it? I'm not sure. We'll see. My throat is a little scratchy today. All right. Chapter 15. Leafpaw opened her eyes to see fronds of fern above her head, outlined against the paling sky. And once she remembered that this was the day of the half moon, when all the medicine cats and their apprentices made the journey to Highstones to meet with StarClan and the mysterious Moonstones. A shiver of excitement ran through her. She had traveled there only once before, when StarClan had received her as a medicine cat apprentice, and the experience would stay with her for the rest of her life. Leaping up from her comfortable mossy nest, she stretched and yawned, blinking away the last traces of sleep. She could hear Cinderpelt moving around inside her den, and a few moments later the medicine cat poked her head out and scented the air. "No smell of rain," she meowed. "We should have a good journey." Without any more delay, she led the way out of camp. Leafpaw cast a regretful look at the pile of fresh kill as they passed it. No cat who wanted to share tongues with StarClan was allowed to eat beforehand. Ashfur, who was on guard beside the entrance of the gorse tunnel, dipped his head as Leafpaw and her mentor went by. Leafpaw felt faintly embarrassed. She was conscious that she was still only an apprentice, and was not yet used to the honor in which warriors treated all medicine cats. Shadows still lay in the ravine and under the trees as Cinderpelt limped towards Four Trees, where she and Leafpaw would cross into WindClan territory. Faint rustling in the undergrowth told them where prey was stirring, but the tiny creatures were safe from hunting for now. From time to time, a bird uttered an alarm call as the two cats passed by, no more than shadows themselves in the gray light. "Practice your scenting skills," Cinderpelt instructed Leafpaw after a while. If you can find any useful herbs, we'll collect them on the way back." Leafpaw obeyed, concentrating as hard as she could until they reached the stream. She and Cinderpelt crouched to lap at water, then padded along the bank until they reached a place where a rock midstream made it easier to cross. Leafpaw kept an eye on her mentor, worried that her injured leg would give her trouble, but Cinderpelt managed to jump with ease of long practice. As they climbed the slope that led to Four Trees, Leafpaw began to pick up the scents of other cats. "ShadowClan," she murmured. "That must be Little Cloud." Cinderpelt nodded. "He usually waits for me." Leafpaw knew that Cinderpelt had saved Little Cloud's life when sickness raged through ShadowClan. Because of that, Little Cloud had chosen to follow the path of a medicine cat, and ever since there had been a bond of friendship between him and Cinderpelt, beyond even the common loyalty shared by all medicine cats. When they reached the top of the hollow, Leafpaw spotted the ShadowClan medicine cat sitting at the base of the great rock. The small but dignified tabby figure was alone, as he had no apprentice. He leaped to his paws as soon as he saw them, calling out a greeting. At the same moment, the bushes further around the hollow rustled, and Mudfur from RiverClan stepped into the clearing with his apprentice, Mothwing. Leafpaw was pleased to see the RiverClan apprentice. She bounded down the slope to join her as Cinderpelt and the other two medicine cats met in the center of the clearing to begin to exchange their news. "Mothwing," she meowed, "it's good to see you." The sun had risen fully above the trees, and Mothwing's golden fur glowed amber. Leafpaw thought again how beautiful she was, but she was disconcerted with her friendly greeting. Disconcerted when her friendly greeting was not returned. Instead, Mothwing nodded coolly. "Greetings." I wondered if Cinderpelt would bring her apprentice. Something about the way she spoke made Leafpaw feel small, as if Mothwing were trying to put her in her place. Of course, Mothwing was already a warrior, so perhaps she expected respect and not friendship from an apprentice. Disappointment stabbed Leafpaw like a thorn. She dipped her head and fell back into place, back a pace to follow the other cats as they made their way up the side of the hollow and across the border to WindClan territory. Aww! Her spirits rose again as they began to cross the moorland. The bright, early leaf-fall sunlight, the breeze ruffling the grass that felt springy under her paws, the scent of gorse and heather were all so different from the lush, shady forest of ThunderClan. Seeing that Mothwing was padding behind her mentor without joining in the talk of the medicine cats, Leafpaw went over to join her. I didn't think that you would be here, she mewed. I thought that Mudfur would have taken you to Mothermouth already. Mothwing swung around to look her fully in the face, her amber eyes smoldering as if Leafpaw had said something to offend her. Leafpaw flinched. I'm sorry, she began. Bimstar, hi! Thank you for the raid! Oh my god, the back rooms. Is that a game that just came out? Cheeky Sock was there too. Oh, snap. So you guys... I'm trying to think of something. I'm gonna keep reading, okay? But, Bim, thank you for the raid. I love you. Get up and have a stretch. If it was really, 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 really scary, I hope. Yums, it was a big collab. Nice! I didn't actually know that that game was multiplayer. Is it? Hi! Meow, 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 meow. It is. Oh, maybe I'll do a collab with it or something. I saw someone playing it the other day. Is that the one that, like, it can hear your mic? I think playing a horror game with someone, like, on call with you would be really fun. Right. Let's continue reading, though. Thank you again, though, Bim. Bye, Silver! Thank you for hanging out! Oh, it can hear my mic? Oh. Well, that's good at least. Okay! Suddenly, Mothwing relaxed and the hostile light died out of her eyes. No, I'm sorry, she meowed. It's not your fault. You heard what Mudfur said at the last gathering about waiting for a sign from StarClan that I would be right medicine cat for the clan? Leafpaw nodded. The sign didn't come. Mothwing paused and began to tug at the tough moorland grass with the claws of one of her forepaws. There was nothing! Thought that meant StarClan had rejected me. The other cats were quick enough to start talking about it, just because my mother was a rogue, and I'm not clan-born. The fierce light shone briefly in her eyes, and then faded. Oh no, I'm so sorry, Leafpaw explained, eyes wide with sympathy. Mudford just told me to be patient. Mothwing's lips twisted wryly. He may be good at that, but I'm not. I tried. Still the sign didn't come. I was ready to leave the clan, but Hawkfrost, you remember my brother, Hawkfrost, told me not to listen. He said I didn't have to prove my loyalty to jealous cats, only to StarClan, and he was sure they would send the sign eventually. And he was right, mewed Leafpaw, or you wouldn't be here now. Yes, he was right. Relief sparkled in Mothwing's eyes. It was only 2 dawns ago. Mudfur came out of his den and found a moth's wing in the entrance. He showed it to Leopardstar and all the other clan cats. He said you couldn't have a clearer sign than that. And did Leopardstar... Leafpaw was interrupted by a distant yowling and looked up. The 3 medicine cats had paused at the top of the distant rise and were looking back towards the 2 of them. Are you coming with us? Or are you coming with us or not? Mudfur's voice came faintly on the wind. Leafpaw exchanged a startled glance with Mothwing and let out a meow of laughter. The sign had been sent from StarClan, so Mothwing could have nothing to worry about. The Moonstone awaited them both, ready to let them into the mysteries of their warriors' ancestors. At that moment, Leafpaw could couldn't imagine anything better than being an apprentice medicine cat. Come on, she mewed excitedly at her companion. We're being left behind. At sun height, they met up with Barkface, the Wind Clan medicine cat, beside the source of one of the moorland streams. Leafpaw watched Barkface and Mudfur greet each other with a friendly meow, in spite of the tension between their clans over Wind Clan's determination to drink at the river until the next gathering. Usual clan rivalries did not exist between medicine cats. Their loyalty was to StarClan, which stretched across all 4 boundaries. After a while, Leafpaw noticed that Cinderpelt was beginning to limp badly, and guessed that her old injury was bothering her. But the ThunderClan medicine cat would never admit that the pace was too much for her, so Leafpaw decided to slow the cats down herself. Can't we have a rest? She began, flopping down on a patch of soft heather. I'm really tired. Cinderpelt gave her a keen glance, as if she guessed what Leafpaw was thinking, and then meowed in agreement. Apprentices, Barkface muttered. No stamina. He hasn't traveled as far as us, Mothwing whispered as she settled down beside Leafpaw. Cheeky! Cheeky, you silly little goose! Thank you so much for the big ol' raid! It means a lot. I see you were playing with Bimstar. How was it? We plop. We just can't stop. Are you reading Warriors? Yeah! It's our Warrior Cat reading day today. Whee! We're in the second series. We read all of the first books in the first series already. So we're in the second series now. Cheeky sock raid. How was it? How was it? I didn't know that the Backrooms was a multiplayer game when Bim came in. Playing with Bim, we played Backrooms. Thank you for the follow, Silver Moon. Chris Crit. Critical. It was hard and we played on easy. Oh, dang. Is it scary? Do you get spooked? I get spooked. Yes! Oh, no. It's terrifying and cryptic. Ooh, I like cryptic. I guess the jump scares is probably what would scare me the most. I like really atmospheric horror stuff. Makes me feel cool, you know? It's like, oh, spooky. Spooky. Yeah! Well, Tiki and Bim, make sure you guys get up and have a nice stretch. All the viewers, too. Have a stretch, have a drink of water, get some food. Make sure you don't have nightmares. That's important. I'm gonna keep on reading. Thank you, Frozen Atlas! I'm gonna keep on reading. And yeah! Nightmares of spaghetti? I had spaghetti for lunch today. I had spaghetti for lunch. Oh no. All right. Where was I? He's not really unkind, Leafpaw murmured back. I think he just likes to sound grumpy. She lay on one side and began to give herself a thorough wash, wanting to look her best for when she stood before StarClan. Mothwing started to do the same, and then paused. Leafpaw? Leafpaw, will you test me? She begged. Test you? On what? Herbs. Mothwing's eyes were wide and anxious, in case Mudfur expects me to know all of them. I don't want to let him down. We use marigold to stop infection and Yara leaves to expel poison. But what's the best for belly aches? I can never remember. Juniper berries. Or serval root, Leafpaw replied, mystified. But why are you getting so worked up? You can always ask your mentor. He won't expect you to know everything already. No! For when I meet StarClan! Mothwing was almost wailing in distress. I have to show them that I'm fit to be a medicine cat. They might not accept me if I can't remember the things I ought to know. Thank you, Bim, for the gifted sub to Cheeky. Leafpaw almost burst out laughing. It's not like that, she meowed patiently. StarClan won't ask you questions. Well, it's difficult to explain, but I'm sure you don't have anything to worry about. Cheeky! Passing it on. Thank you so much, both of you. Mwah! Have a good rest of your day. Thank you for all your hard work on stream today. Sure. It's easy enough for you. To Leafpaw's surprise, there was a hint of bitterness in Mothwing's tone. You were born a forest cat. I have to be better than any other cat just to be accepted in the clan. Her eyes were huge, shining with a mixture of anger and determination. Pity for her squeezed Leafpaw's heart, and she swept her tail around to touch Mothwing's shoulder. That might be true of RiverClan, she meowed, but it isn't true of StarClan. You don't earn StarClan's approval. They give it as a gift. Well, they might not give it to me, Mothwing muttered. Leafpaw stared at her friend in amazement. She was so strong and beautiful, and had all of the warrior skills, as well as the chance to learn those of a medicine cat. But she was still afraid that she would never belong in the forest. Moving closer to her, Leafpaw pressed her muzzle comfortingly into Mothwing's side. You'll be fine, she murmured. Look at Firestar. He's not clan-born, but now he's ThunderClan leader. When Mothwing still looked uncertain, she added, Trust me. When you stand in front of the Moonstone, you'll understand everything. You're so cute, guys. The sun was beginning to sink as the medicine cats approached high stones. The rough moorland grass gave way to the steep slope of bare soil, with here and there a clump of heather. Outcrops of rock poked through, blotched with yellow lichen. Barkface, who had taken the lead, paused at a flat rock and gazed upward. Just below the peak, a dark hole gaped in the hillside beneath the stone archway. There's Mothermouth, Leafpaw explained to Mothwing, and then remembered that her friend would have seen it before, and she just made her apprentice journey during warrior training. Sorry, she added. I know this isn't your first time. Mothwing's eyes widened as she gazed up at the yawning gap. This is as far as I went, she replied. I wasn't chosen to go inside. It's frightening, I know, but it's wonderful too, Leafpaw reassured her. Mothwing drew herself up. I'm not afraid, she insisted. I'm a warrior. I'm not afraid of anything. Not even rejection by StarClan? Leafpaw didn't dare put words into her thoughts, but as she settled down beside her friend to wait for nightfall, she couldn't help noticing that Mothwing was trembling. At last the half-moon floated above the peak, and Mudfur rose to his paws. It's time, he rasped. Leafpaw felt tension in her belly as she followed her mentor up the slope and underneath the stone archway. Cold, damp air flowed towards them, and it almost seemed as if a river of darkness flowed out too, blacker than the night that surrounded them. Leafpaw took her place at the back of the line of cats, just behind Mothwing. The tunnel sloped down, winding back and forth until Leafpaw lost all sense of direction. The air seemed thick, as if they were underwater as well as underground. She could see nothing, not even Mothwing padding no more than a rabbit hop in front of her, though she could hear the RiverClan cat's shallow breathing and smell the fierce scent that came from her. At last, Leafpaw felt a cool ripple in the air around them, and her fur tinged with excitement as she recognized the first sign that they were coming to the heart of the hill. Fresh scents of the world above came faintly to her as she stepped into a large cavern, a glitter of starshine through the hole in the roof showed her soaring walls of stone, and underneath her paws the floor was smooth, well-worn stone. In the center of the cave stood a rock 3 tail lengths high. Leafpaw's eyes widened in awe as she gazed at it, though as yet it was dark, a formidable sleeping presence. Mothwing's fur brushed her lightly. Where are we? She whispered. What's happening? Mothwing, come before the moonstone, Barkface announced from further in the cave. We must all wait until the time comes to share tongues with StarClan. He and the other medicine cat sat along the stone, about a fox length away from it. Leafpaw heard a shuddering sigh from her friend and pressed reassuringly against the River Clan apprentice's shoulder. "It's okay for us to sit, too," she breathed into Mothwing's ear. As she took her place a tail length behind Cinderpelt, she felt Mothwing hesitantly sit down beside her. In the darkness, time stretched out until Leafpaw almost believed that they had been waiting there for a season. Then, within a heartbeat, brilliant white light flashed into the cave and the moon appeared through the hole of the roof. She heard Mothwing gasp. The moonstone woke into dazzling life in front of them, glittering in moonlight, as if the whole of Silverpelt had swirled down into its crystal surface. As Leafpaw's eyes became used to the brilliant light, she saw Mudfur raise to his paws, turn, and pace slowly across the cavern floor to stand in front of his apprentice. The white light flooded over his fur so that he looked as if he were covered in ice. "Mothwing," he meowed solemnly, "is it your wish to enter into the mysteries of StarClan as a medicine cat?" Mothwing hesitated. Leafpaw saw her swallow before she replied. "It is." "Then come forward." Mothwing rose and followed her mentor back across the cavern until both cats stood close to the stone. In its light, Mothwing looked unearthly, her golden fur pale as ash and a glint of silver in her eyes, almost as if she had already joined the ranks of StarClan. Leafpaw shivered. That could not be a good thought. She pushed it out of her mind, reluctant to believe that it might be an omen. "Warriors of StarClan," Mudfur continued, "I present to you this apprentice. She has chosen the path of a medicine cat. Grant her your wisdom and insight so that she may understand your ways and heal her clan in accordance to your will." He waved his tail and spoke to Mothwing. "Lie down here and press your nose against the stone." As if she moved in a dream, Mothwing obeyed. When she was settled, all the medicine cats moved forward to lie in the same position around the moonstone, and Cinderpelt gestured to Leafpaw to join them. Her fur crawled with anticipation. She knew what was about to happen. "It's time to share tongues with StarClan," Barkface murmured. "Speak with us, warrior ancestors," Little Cloud meowed. Show us the destiny of our clans." Leafpaw closed her eyes and pressed her nose against the surface of the stone. At once the cold gripped her body like a talon of a hawk, or as if she had fallen headlong into the dark water. She couldn't see or hear anything, or feel the stone floor of the cavern underneath her. She was floating in a dark night without even the light of Silverpelt. Then a series of rapid scenes began to flash across her vision. She saw 4 trees, but the great trees were bare, with only a few ragged leaves still clinging to the branches. One of the trees was shaking back and forth, more violently than in the strongest wind, while the others stood still around it. Almost at once, the picture was replaced with a view of monsters speeding on by the thunderpath, and a long line of cats trekking through snow, a dark line against an endless white landscape. There were no trees here, and nothing to suggest that it was anywhere near their 4 territories. The last scene of all showed her Squirrelpaw, and though Leafpaw knew she was forbidden to speak, she could barely hold back a cry of relief and delight. Her sister was trotting over a broad green field, and Leafpaw had the impression of several other cats with her before the vision was gone, and she was left in darkness once more. Gradually, the cold stone beneath her seeped back into her fur, and the endless space inside the dreams of StarClan dwindled to the ordinary freshness of life of a night in Leafpaw. Leafpaw opened her eyes, blinking, and drew away from the moonstone before shakily rising to her paws. She felt oddly comforted, as though she were a kid again, protected by her mother while she slept. StarClan had preserved her link with Squirrelpaw, even though they were so far apart. The other medicine cats were getting to their paws around her, ready to return to the surface. Mothwing stood among them, her eyes blazing with a mixture of triumph and wonder at the things StarClan had shown her. Leafpaw felt a sharp pang of relief as she realized that their warrior ancestors must have accepted Mothwing. Whatever she felt about her clanmates, the River Clan cat didn't have to doubt StarClan's approval anymore. Mudfur touched Mothwing's mouth with his tail tip, and a sign for silence, and led the way out of the cavern. Once again, Leafpaw brought up the rear, padding along the twisting undergrowth tunnel, back towards the everyday world. As soon as they reached the entrance, Mothwing leaped to the top of a jutting spur rock. She flung her head back and let out a yowl of pure triumph. Mudfur watched her, shaking his head indulgently. Not so bad after all, then, was it? Well, he went on as Mothwing sprang down to his side again. You're a true medicine apprentice now. How does it feel? Wonderful, Mothwing replied. I saw Hawkfrost leading a patrol and... She broke off as Leafpaw widened her eyes at her, trying to signal that medicine cats do not share their dreams until they had some idea of what they meant. Leafpaw patted over and touched noses with the RiverClan apprentice. Congratulations, she murmured. I told you it would be all right. Yes, you did. Mothwing's eyes shone. Everything will be all right now. RiverClan will hear that StarClan approved of me. They'll have to accept me now. She bounded off down the slope, leaving the others to follow more slowly. Leafpaw watched her with her heart full of questions. What had Mothwing seen? And what visions had StarClan sent to Cinderpelt? The ThunderClan medicine cat was looking thoughtful, but her expression gave nothing away. Suppressing a shiver, Leafpaw remembered her own visions. What was that? What was powerful enough to shake one of the great oaks of 4 trees? And why were cats traveling in the bitter cold of Leafbear? If StarClan had sent her signs of what the future would bring, how was she supposed to interpret them? Yet, for all her uncertainty, Leafpaw was full of hope. Even though Squirrelpaw was a long way from the forest, StarClan had shown her she was safe. Send her back soon, Leafpaw prayed as she followed the other cats down the hill. Whatever this journey leads them, bring them back safely home. Chapter 16. Okay, we're more than halfway done now. We're like... I can't do math. Like 100 pages away out of 325. Okay, well we still have like maybe like 115 or something. 115 pages away. Something like that. We're at 216. It isn't very long. But my throat is kind of sore. I do want to take a shower before dinner time. Oh, tough stuff. Tough stuff is happening in my brain. I think that we will... Wait, let me see how long this chapter is. Actually, this chapter is pretty short. We can finish this chapter. Okay, one more chapter. Brambleclaw raced back to the edge with Feathertail right behind him. All his instincts told him to dash into the garden and rescue the other cats, but the memory of what happened when they had first crossed the Thunderpath warned him to be more careful. Instead, he pushed his way through the branches until he could peer out while still remaining hidden. What he saw made his belly flip over. Near the 2-legged nest, 2 huge kitty pets had cornered Stormfur and Crowpaw. The WindClan apprentice was crouched close to the ground, his ears flattened and his lips drawn back in a snarl. Stormfur had one paw stretched out in front of him, threatening the kitty pets with unsheathed claws. Brambleclaw could see that they wouldn't get away without a fight, and there was nowhere for them to retreat except through the half-open door of the 2-legged nest. Great StarClan! Feathertail gasped in his ear. Those kitty pets are bigger than most warriors. Brambleclaw wasn't sure that mattered. Size and a glossy pelt didn't make a warrior. He didn't have any doubts that he and his friends would win the battle. But the 2 kitty pets were defending their territory, and they looked capable of inflicting nasty wounds. Wounds that clan cats could not afford if they were going to keep on with their journey. He tensed his muscles, preparing to leap on the kitty pets from behind, but before he could move, a flame-colored streak flashed down from the fence and across the garden. Squirrelpaw, no! Brambleclaw yowled. The apprentice took no notice. He was not even sure she had heard. Hurling herself into the midst of the bristling cat, she clawed at the nearest kitty pet. Both of them swung around, snarling. At once, Brambleclaw called out, Stormfur! Crowpaw! Over here! Squirrelpaw shot across the grass and crashed into Feathertail's flank as she charged under the hedge, but Stormfur stayed where he was, screeching at the advancing kitty pets with Squirrelpaw beside him. At the same moment, Tawnypelt appeared on top of the fence from the next garden and leaped down to join them. "Back off, Foxden!" Squirrelpaw spat as the two kitty pets closed in. The nearest of them lashed at her with one paw, missing her by a whisker. Then the door out to the two-leg nest was flung open, and a female two-leg appeared, shouting and waving her arms. The kitty pets fled around to the side of the nest, while the clan cats dashed for the refuge of the hedge. The two-legs glared after them for a moment and then retreated into her nest, banging the door behind her. "Squirrelpaw!" Brambleclaw hissed as the apprentice skidded to a halt. "What were you thinking out there? Those two could have clawed your fur off!" Squirrelpaw shrugged, quite unrepentant. "No, they couldn't. All kitty pets are soft," she meowed. "Anyway, Stonefur and Crowpaw were there. Brambleclaw, don't scold her." Stormfur's amber eyes glowed as he gazed at Squirrelpaw. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Feathertail murmured agreement, and Brambleclaw began to feel uncomfortable. Tawnypelt gave the young cat a nod of approval, too. Only Crowpaw looked cross, perhaps aware that Squirrelpaw had come off better than him, and perhaps regretting that in the moment of a crisis he had obeyed an order from Brambleclaw. "I never said she wasn't brave," Brambleclaw defended himself hotly, "just that she needs to think first. We've still got a long way to go, and if any of us is injured, it's gonna hold us back." "Well, we're all here now," Tawnypelt pointed out. "Let's get going." Brambleclaw led the way back to the path of rough ground where he had waited with Feathertail. By now the sun had gone, but the red streak stained the sky, showing them the path they must follow. We could spend the night here," Feathertail suggested. "There's shelter and prey." "It's too close to the two-leg nests," Stormfur argued. "If we cross the thunder path into those fields, we'll be able to find a safe place." No cat disagreed with that. Starkland had sent them on an easy crossing of the second thunder path, and as twilight gathered, they began to trek across the fields. The surface was rough, with boggy patches and heaps of stone, as if once there had been two-leg nests here that had been allowed to fall into ruin. It was almost dark when they came to a stretch of broken-down wall. Ferns and grasses had rooted in the cracks, giving some shelter, and moss covered the fallen stones. "This doesn't look too bad," Stormfur meowed. "We could stop here." "Oh, yes, please," Squirrelpaw agreed. "I'm so tired I think my paws will drop off." "Well, I think we should keep going a bit further," Crowpaw objected stubbornly. Brambleclaw suspected he was just trying to be difficult. "There's no prey scent here." "We've traveled a long way today," Brambleclaw meowed. "If we go any further, we could run into more trouble, or have to spend the night in the open. Let's look around first, though, and make sure there aren't any nasty surprises. No badgers or foxes holed up nearby." The rest of the cats all agreed, except Crowpaw, who grunted disagreeably. Squirrelpaw went to investigate on the other side of the wall. When she had been gone for a while, Brambleclaw set off after her, bracing himself to find that she had run into trouble again, only to meet her bouncing back around the line of the stones. "This place is great," she announced, shaking droplets of water from her whiskers, while Brambleclaw wondered where all her energy came from. "There's a puddle on the other side with plenty of water." "Water? Lead me to it." Tawnypelt meowed, trotting in the direction Squirrelpaw indicated. "My mouth's as dry as the last season's leaves." A moment later she came back and stalked threatening across to Squirrelpaw with her tail bristling. "That was a dirty trick," she growled. Squirrelpaw looked bewildered. "Trick? I don't know what you mean." Tawnypelt spat. "The water tastes disgusting, full of salt or something." "No, it doesn't," Squirrelpaw protested. "I had a good long drink, and it was fresh as anything." Tawnypelt turned away and snatched angrily at some juicy stalk grass. Stormfur shot Squirrelpaw a worried glance. "Wait there," he ordered. A moment later, he reappeared with drops gleaming on his whiskers. "No, it's fine," he reported. "Then why did I get a mouthful full of salt?" Tawnypelt meowed. A shiver ran down Brambleclaw's spine. "What if—" he began, his gaze darting from one cat to another. He swallowed. "What if it's a sign from Starkland that we're doing the right thing? Trying to find the sun-drawn place. My dream was about salt water, remember?" The four chosen cats looked at each other's eyes stretching wide with awe and, Brambleclaw thought, appreciation. Apprehension. If you're right, Feathertail murmured, it would mean that StarClan are watching us all the time. She glanced around as if she expected to see sorry shapes stalking towards them in a darkened field. Brambleclaw dug his claws into the earth, feeling the need to anchor himself in something real and solid. Then that's a good thing, he meowed. So why haven't we all had a sign? Crowpaw asked challengingly. Why just the two of you? Perhaps we'll have one later, Feathertail suggested, brushing her tail against Crowpaw's flank. Maybe they're spread out to let us know we're staying on the right path. Perhaps. Crowpaw shrugged angrily and went off to curl up by himself at one end of the wall. The rest of the party settled down too. Brambleclaw thought longingly of the mice in Ravenpaw's barn. There was no prey scent here, and they would have to go sleep hungry. The next day they would have to spend time hunting before they went much further. The first stars of Silverpelt were beginning to appear above his head. Warriors of StarClan, Brambleclaw thought drowsily, watching us and guiding us on our journey. If only I could speak to you right now, he thought. I wish I could ask you if we're really doing the right thing, and why we have to travel so far. I wish I could ask you what trouble you have foreseen for the forest. The stars glittered more brightly still, but no answers came. Chapter 17. I wish the warriors realized that the two legs just want to scratch their ears and kiss their foreheads. I don't even think they'll like that. They won't even like that. Getting touched by two legs. Jeez! Alright, guys. Let me see how long this chapter is. Okay, this is a lot longer. We're not gonna read this chapter. That'll be a good chapter to start with next time. Okay, we're on chapter 17 now. 17. We're like stuck in the almost halfway point. I mean 100 pages point. We're past half point. Next time, I don't think we'll finish. I don't know, actually. Hold on, how much did I read today? Chapter 17, and I started on chapter 9? Okay, so we read 100 pages today. So actually we might be able to. We might be able to finish next time. Since I read 100 pages this time, and I'll be able to read 100 pages next time. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. It's heating up. It's picking up the pace. It'll pick up more when people die. I mean, cats die. I hope you guys can't hear my sister blaring something in the background. I don't know what she's listening to. You can Squirrelpaw. Squirrelpaw's a little feisty, a little fiery, one might say. All right, guys. Today, who will we raid today? Meow, 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 meow. My friend Sarah is streaming right now. That might be nice. You guys can meet Sarah. Squirrelpaw gives 0 Fs and that's true. She isn't. All right. Let us raid Sarah. Give her some love. She just came back from streaming after a really long break. She's gonna get like a, what's the word? A new model soon, which is very exciting. She's very sweet. She's playing Honkai Star Rail! So if you guys want to watch that, then watch that. Be nice to her, okay? We'll have a stream on Friday. Ugh, but no stream on Saturday, I don't think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure no stream on Saturday. Maybe on Sunday? Maybe not. It's my grandma's birthday on Sunday. So we'll be like eating dinner. But because she's like so old, it can't be like for very long. Anyways, okay, the time's running out. I love you guys. Make sure you get up, have a stretch, get some food. You're going on a concert on Friday. Oh, we'll have fun, Pappy. That's fine. Enjoy yourself. If it's a night for you, have a good night. Brush your teeth, floss your teeth. If it's a day for you, have a good day. Put on some sunscreen. Even if it isn't sunny out, it's still good for you. Bye!